Yeah, there we go. It's always a little bit weird with capturing Umineko. Don't really know why. Just have to like swap it off and back on. I think it's because the window title changes or something. I was set up wrong maybe. Oh, I too can access the Steam community while playing. I hate that stuff. Goodness. Okay, I'm not gonna hit this by mistake this time, I promise. Hey, Roger. Ugh, I'm a little bit more tired this morning. But I did good today. I got up, I had my coffee, and I didn't go back to sleep for 2 hours. I'm actually still awake. So, I deserve praise for that. Wow. A bot ad. Let's see. How do I get rid of that quickly? Let's see here. Chat. Delete message. Goodbye. Okay. The strange letter that the witch had entrusted to Maria wiped the memories of dinner from our minds. Maria was repeatedly barraged with questions by Aunt Rosa and the other parents, and became increasingly ill-tempered when they refused to believe her. If we kids tried to butt in, they'd probably ignore us. Our parents were all stirred up, firing back and forth about the gold and the distribution of the assets, and completely forgetting that we were even here. By the way, Umineko is going to heat up a little bit today. We're finally going to see some things happen, so it's a good day to tune in. I'd already guessed they'd been talking like this in the shadows, but I hadn't thought they'd be so blunt. It gave all of us kids a considerable shock. From what we could overhear, all the parents wanted more money as soon as possible. Back and forth about grandfather's inheritance, back and forth about the distribution of the gold if it was found, about advance payments and cash. It was so despicable I could hardly bear to watch, even though one of them was my father. It looked like Jessica felt the same way. We left our seats without being asked to, and went to hang out somewhere well away from our parents. I get it. Now I totally see why grandfather hates coming down for meals. I'm so disillusioned with our parents right now. All that about money and the inheritance. How can they act like that right out in the open? I mean, this is right after Maria's letter that she received when Beatrice was read. The whole thing about solve the epitaph or things will happen and I'll reclaim my fortune. Well, I'm already completely disillusioned with my old bastard. There's no way I could think any worse of him. That's exactly the same for me. Still, that freaking shocked me. Shocked me to the core. Jessica looked down at the floor, irritated. She was always talking about how bad her parents were, but maybe she hadn't really felt that way deep inside. The depths of Jessica's shock made that clear. You're all minors being supported by your parents, so you might not understand, but getting money is neither a simple nor a pretty thing. I won't try to force you to understand right now, since you're still kids. But even so, I want you to realize that your parents are just doing their best in their own way. Oh great, George Anaki's gotten all mature. George Nissan, I know you're working hard as a full-fledged member of society, but does that mean you turn into a shameless, greedy vulture like our parents whenever you start talking about money and assets? If it were only for my own benefit, then no, I wouldn't want to do that. However, when your family and your employees, your subordinates, and their families are all counting on you, there are some times when you must fight. I hate that kind of fight. That back and forth about grandfather's inheritance just makes me want to puke. Jessica pretended to spit violently. That harsh reaction made the depths of her pain very clear. I think George is like 3 years older than Battler. I want to say Battler is like 18, George is like 21. I'm actually not sure offhand. I don't think it's super important. Doesn't say here though. Oh well. Let's stop talking about this. All this about grandfather's hidden gold, property, and inheritance is our parents' problem, not ours. I agree. At the very least, I think children have a duty to be considerate and stay out of their parents' way when they're talking together. Tch, sounds pretty boring. Everyone knows the phrase, adults are filthy. But now we'd seen that for ourselves, and that really did give us a considerable shock. George Aniki was now pretty much an adult, and had already been disillusioned with my dad, so the shock wasn't that big for us. But Jessica seemed to be taking it hard. Apparently, she'd received a bigger blow than I thought. She always talks badly about her parents, but it looks like she hadn't changed at all on the inside. Even now, she's still a pure-hearted, delicate person who can't doubt others. I'm sure she respected her parents as much as anyone else does. And then her parents started raging about, going, money, money, inheritance, inheritance, my money, right in front of all the other parents and the children. It's no surprise she received such a shock from hearing that. Jessica-chan, please don't start hating your mother and father. I would ask you to understand them, but at least don't hate them. I get it, just leave me alone for a bit. 6 years ago, I would have kept taunting Jessica even though even after she got all dejected. But I guess I really have grown over the last 6 years. And I realized it'd be better to leave Jessica alone right now. Jessica suddenly looked away. Sulkily? Is sulk away is that a word? Sulkily. Yeah, okay. Sure. Okay. I wasn't aware that was correct. Jessica suddenly looked away sulkily and left the partner. She probably wanted to be alone for a while. I could do nothing but wordlessly watch her back as she left. Come to think of it, I wonder where Maria-chan went. She's probably pouting in front of the portrait. Maria truly loved the witches, and she'd expected that coming in direct contact with Beatrice and receiving the letter as proof would surprise everyone and make them happy. However, the adults had doubted its authenticity, thoroughly bombarding Maria with questions and refusing to accept her story. Even for me, it wasn't hard to imagine how much that must have hurt Maria. We couldn't speak to Maria or Jessica. In the end, George, Aniki, and I just abandoned ourselves to the sound of the falling rain and the dark night. I wonder what's happening with that typhoon. Maybe there's something about it on the news. George Aniki started walking to the corner of the parlor where the television was. So desperate for conversation, bringing it over the weather, huh? I see how it is. He hadn't called me over, and I really couldn't have cared less where the typhoon was on the sea now. So, without going over to the television, I loitered around the window. The wind hasn't picked up that much here, but I wonder if it's horrible over the sea. I did hear about a severe storm warning on the weather report. Ah, Kirie-san. I take it those big talks between the adults are going smoothly, yeah? She seemed to catch the sarcasm. Kirie-san shrugged. I wonder if that stomachache of a discussion will continue all night. It's not going to be fun. Well then, please enjoy playing vultures to grandfather's property as much as you like. I feel sick. I'll agree with you on that. If I could just slip away like you, I'd do it. Unfortunately, I can't, even if I'm not allowed to speak. We spouses have it pretty rough too. Kirie-san took a deep breath, smiling bitterly. That's right, they probably wouldn't let Kirie-san speak since she only married into the family. Still, as Dad's partner, she's had no choice but stay by his side and support him. She's probably had to bear the full brunt of this mental pressure much more than me. I wasn't going to apologize, but realizing that I'd spoken too harshly, I cut the sarcasm for the time being. How does it look? Are they still stuck on the topic of the mysterious witch, Beatrice? More or less. Those four siblings are always piling up secret agreements when they come together to discuss the division of grandfather's inheritance. They're saying that some unknown fifth person has appeared and is trying to make things even more complicated, and there's no way that'll make for a peaceful conversation. Just when you think they're snarling at each other, they'll set up a common front. Natsune-san's not the only one getting headaches. Without really spoiling anything, keep in mind moving forward as we see characters make their moves and do things. The question of whether or not this Beatrice, who gave Maria the letter, is another person, or are they one of the people we've already met on the island? Keep that question in mind, because that's going to be key throughout the entirety of Umineko. On the one hand, they all want a larger portion than the other siblings, so they're all rivals. But on the other hand, they don't want one yen to be snatched up by anyone other than the siblings, so they're also all allies. I hadn't been told the details, but the siblings were apparently discussing how to protect their shares under various situations, setting up ceasefire agreements and rules to prevent anyone from getting an unfair advantage, even preparing to resort to legal action if absolutely necessary. That they would go this far to preserve their shares was so beyond disgusting that you just had to acknowledge their resilience. So, basically, Beatrice is like an assassin sent by grandfather. He probably wanted to scare the hell out of his children for talking about the inheritance without him. Hehehe. Who's this Beatrice, I wonder? If everything she claims is true, then she's a mystery figure that no one knew about until today. And she also knows about grandfather's hidden gold. On top of that, she was even entrusted with the head's ring. She must truly have been trusted by him. Well, obviously, I don't think she's a witch riding around on a broom, but there's no doubt she's a mysterious person who's earned the right to be called a witch. If only Maria-chan would go into more detail about that. Everyone's been smothering her, even though she's just a little girl. They really scared her, and some things they might have asked now can't be asked. Oh, some things they might have asked now can't be asked, I see. I wonder if those people have ever read North Wind in the Sun. What we do know is that Maria received a letter from the person who took the name Beatrice. She sure is shy for a mystery person, entrusting Maria with a letter and hiding away even now, when she could have just appeared and talked to us directly. Hahaha. Hey, Battler-kun, Do you really think a person called Beatrice actually exists? Who knows? Doesn't it really seem like a false name? Like she is grandfather's representative, so she was given permission to take the name of the witch from his delusions? No, that's not what I meant. Right now, there's a total of 18 people here on Rakenjima. Do you think there's a 19th person? Well, here we go. This is the first time this gets asked. Not the last. Are there really a full 18 people on this island right now? Wondering about that, I began counting on my fingers, and it really did come out to that many. So you can check in here. There should be 18 total, so we got 8, 11, 14, yep, 18 people. So just try to keep track of our people here as we go forward. Do I think that a 19th person exists? What exactly do you mean? Just what I said. The person who lent Mario that umbrella supposedly wasn't one of us 18. So isn't it natural to assume that a 19th person exists and that this person lent Mario the umbrella? Well, yeah, it sure looks that way. Then where exactly is this person now? At the very least, she must have been on the island when it started raining. Ever since that time, the weather has grown progressively worse, so taking a boat out would be pretty much impossible. In that case, that person must still be on the island, hiding from the rain somewhere. And whether any of us spotting her. True, we've all been randomly prowling around all over the mansion and the guest house, but no one has bumped into a 19th person. But this island's huge. There might be other places to take shelter from the rain, other than the mansion and the guest house. At about this time, I began to realize what direction Kiria-san's suspicions were taking us in. Kiria-san was denying that a 19th person existed. Beatrice was one of us 18. In other words, she thought someone we knew well was tricking us. If Beatrice is who she claims, she would surely be the most honored of guests, the most honored of confidants trusted by Grandfather. There's no way Grandfather wouldn't give that kind of person a warm reception. She would surely have been ushered into the mansion. However, we haven't seen anyone like that. Wait a sec, isn't this line of reasoning a bit too hasty? Sure, no one spotted this person, but that doesn't mean you can deny the possibility that a 19th person exists, right? Maybe, for some reason, they landed on this island stealthily and have been hiding ever since. It's what they call a devil's proof. It's easy to prove that something exists. If this Beatrice appears in front of us all and says hi, then it's settled. But it's impossible to prove that there's no 19th person. Yes, Battler-kun, your way of reasoning isn't bad. In our current situation, there isn't enough information to either accept or deny that a 19th person exists. But if you spin the chessboard around and think that way, then you can deny the existence of a 19th person with near certainty. Spin the chessboard around was one of Kiria-san's favorite phrases, and it's going to be one of Battler's moving forwards. I've been influenced by those words and use them myself from time to time. See? When you get stuck trying to find a move in chess or shogi, then by spinning the board around and looking at everything from your opponent's standpoint, you can often see a strategy that'll give you the upper hand. It means turning things around and putting yourself in your opponent's shoes. You see? Let's say the 19th person called Beatrice actually exists. That person must have managed, without being seen by anyone, to stealthily arrive on this island and remain hidden ever since. Maybe they had some reason, okay? In that case, why did they go all the trouble of appearing before Maria and handing her the letter? It really was a contradiction. If they had some reason for hiding themselves, then they should have stayed hidden the whole time. But even so, they'd appeared openly in front of Maria. Then, wait, Maria said it herself. She said the witch made her a messenger. Maybe that's because Maria was the youngest and looked the most obedient. Why would they need a messenger? If they just wanted a letter delivered to the family conference, they could have mailed it. If they mailed it to each of the 4 siblings, no one would be able to ignore it. There was no need for this person to carry it themselves and secretly deliver it by hand. Yeah, that does sound pretty weird. In the first place, if Beatrice existed and wanted to make her presence known to everyone, then she could have just openly presented herself to all of us. Despite that, she chose the vague method of appearing through a little girl called Maria-chan, and only gave us a vague impression of who she was. Contradiction. Let's go a little deeper, shall we? She appeared in front of Maria, trying to give us the impression that a 19th person existed, and yet, she still hasn't appeared before us and is hiding somewhere at this very moment. Think about those contradictions. You've got to keep these things in mind when you spin the chessboard around. In short, if a person wants to leave us with the impression that Beatrice exists as a 19th person, what might their goal be? If this person wanted to hide, then they wouldn't have made their presence known. And if they wanted to show themselves, they wouldn't have used the roundabout approach of entrusting someone with a letter. Which means, it's simple. Beatrice is one of the 18 people. That's why they want to create the illusion that there are more than 18 people. The 19th person was revealed so spectacularly. If someone were to profit from this, it wouldn't be some 19th person in hiding. It'd be one of the original 18 people. It's sound logic. Of course, this reasoning is full of holes. I guess it's not sound logic. If you turn over even a few of its premises, it'll fall apart. But I'm almost completely certain it's correct. I mean, it makes sense. It's a strong line of logic, at least. This is starting to feel pretty creepy. Someone lent Mari the umbrella and handed her the letter. Supposedly, none of the 18 did this. And yet, Beatrice was hiding among those 18. What was this person planning, hiding the true form and pretending to be Beatrice? I suspected it might have been Maria-chan play-acting, but the contents of the message were extremely complicated, and it's hard to imagine Maria-chan writing that herself. However, I can't deny the possibility that Maria-chan is working together with someone. But wait a sec, Maria's a 9-year-old kid, right? What could she possibly be planning, and with whom? And what about her straightforward, overly honest, obedient nature? Yes, I also understand what kind of a person Maria-chan is. That's exactly why I think it's possible. That girl is a dreamer who can't help but look up to and blindly accept the existence of witches. More water, jeez. Got dry lips. So if a person appeared in front of her and claimed to be the witch Beatrice, Maria-chan would happily swallow it up, I think. So you're saying that if someone disguised themselves by wearing that fancy dress from the portrait, tricking Maria wouldn't be that hard? Of course, with that reasoning, all of us women would become the primary suspects. Anyway, who did Maria-chan encounter? Learning the details of that question would be the best key to solving this riddle. But this key's been firmly locked away inside Maria-chan's heart. Everyone denied the existence of the witch without listening to her, barraging her too much with questions about who Beatrice actually was. She probably won't open her heart to the adults now. In the dim hall, in front of the portrait of Beatrice, Maria was sobbing. Hi, Izu. Welcome. You know, it's funny, the whole Umineko, the cry thing. Umineko means seagull, but it's written with a kanji for sea and cat. So a long time ago, before Umineko was finished, and before its translation was finished as well, people used to refer to it affectionately as sea cats instead of Umineko. It's just a weird pet name for it. Mario was sobbing. Ooh, ooh. No one believes I met Beatrice. Ooh, ooh. Even though I showed them the letter Beatrice gave, they still don't believe. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm not gonna fake little girl cry. I only go so far. Anyway, Maria-chan's holding the key. The key to whether Beatrice is one of the 18th people or a 19th person. Maria's stubborn, right? When that girl gets angry, it's pretty hard to make her feel better. Battler could. I think a kid like you would be better at cheering her up than an adult like me. I think a lot of people make Remelia cry like that because of Umineko. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's intended because they're both like little Ojo-sama characters, kind of. After she's feeling better, try asking. I know you don't care about all this back and forth about the inheritance, but don't you find this Western Mansion mystery situation exciting? Who in the world is this person who gave Maria-chan the letter? It makes your intellectual curiosity ache. You're actually pretty tough considering you're still excited after being... Hey, don't growl. Do you want to sit in my lap or not, cat? Even after being dragged through that endless money talk, adults can be pretty amazing. I shrugged exasperatedly. But I did notice something. Kyrie noticed how dejected I was after overhearing our parents' turbulent discussion, and was probably trying to clear the air. At the very least, I'd recovered enough to voice my complaints. She wasn't my real mother, so I've never felt like calling her mom, but it did make me think she's a real adult. Hey brats, so this is where you were. Kyrie, you really took your time fixing your makeup, didn't you? Think I'll make a habit of going out to touch up my makeup too. I'm sorry, a woman's makeup takes a long time. So, how's the discussion been without me? Yeah, I'm sure everything was all peaceful and harmonious. Kiria-san poked the weak spot under my arm with her elbow. We decided to take a break to cool our heads a little. It looks like we'll be out all night. Makes me want to cry. Like a seagull. His way of talking hadn't changed, but he couldn't completely hide his fatigue. When the Rudolph cries. I couldn't say it was sympathetic, but he looked pitiful compared to his normal energetic self. Still, that rain's just awful. I really don't want to go back to the guest house. Looks like Natsune-san set things up so we could spend the night here at the mansion. What do we do? We don't need to decide until you're done, right? If you run so low in energy that you can't return to a room, then we can take them up on their offer. You're right. We can think about it later. What about you, Battler? If I stayed, I'd just get in the way. I'll be nice and go back over there. I see. Will you go back soon? I don't know. It'd be lonely to head back by myself. I'll gather all the kids and we'll head out. Okay, you go do that. Also, Battler, you won't be going to sleep that easily tonight, right? Yeah, I'll probably be up talking to the cousins. Sounds like we'll be up all night. Is there a problem with that? I see. If you're still awake and the adults discussion is over, I want to have a little talk as a family. A what? That doesn't sound like you. Apparently, Kirie-san was thinking the same thing. What are you talking about? Is this game really old? It's somewhat old now, not super old. Umineko probably finished like over 10 years ago now, right? Take a look. The very first game. So essentially, the majority of Umineko is eight visual novels. There's like some side stuff too, but you could say Umineko itself is 8. And the first one came out on 2007. Comic at 72. The last one. Apparently 2010. Really? Huh. Only a few years. It didn't get official English releases for like years later though, but it got fan patches. And eventually the people who did the fan patches were able to work on the official releases, which is really cool. So it's kind of like a Labyrinth of Toho 2 situation, but a bit more formal than that. What are you talking about? She asked him in a small voice. It looked like Kirie-san didn't have a clue what that meant either. I was following Umineko back when it was still going. So I was reading the fan-translated VNs as they came out. It's on Steam nowadays though, which is really cool. A lot more accessible. But I figure it's time to do a reread, as there's some people who haven't seen Umineko yet. I also want to talk to you about it, Kirie. I'll tell you later, so don't ask now. Please. I don't know anyone who neglects the concept of family as much as this old bastard. Now he's saying we're going to have a talk as a family? Both Kirie-san and I couldn't help but get wide-eyed. Don't look so terrified. I'm the one who should be terrified. After all, at that point, he swallowed his words for an instant. Even though putting on airs of importance wasn't much like my dad. You're freaking me out, Dad. Everyone in our family is gathered here now, right? Don't make a big deal out of it and spit it out. Tonight, I will probably be killed. There was a huge crash of thunder. It must have been really close. Dad's expression, brightly illuminated by the lightning, was burned into my eyes. Dad's face, which always looked so sure of itself, and which always wore a taunting expression, was strangely frail in a way I couldn't really explain. It was so worn out that he looked like a different person. But what? What are you talking about? That doesn't sound like you. I agree. What happened? You look so timid all of a sudden. It's not like you. I'm gonna go fix my makeup too. Don't follow me. Dad turned away weakly. After that, only Kirie and I were left, still wide-eyed. What did he say? Tonight he'll be killed? You don't think that mysterious letter scared him, do you? He's been watching too many serial murder movies. Kirie-san didn't answer my light-hearted words, and continued to stare at my dad's disappearing back. Battler-kun, when you told Rudolph-san to spill the beans right away, he left without telling us anything. Even though he said he had something to say to both of us, he didn't answer you. Why? Spin the chessboard around. What do you see? When he said he wanted to talk, but then couldn't, that's a contradiction. What, can you see something by looking from Dad's perspective? Yes, I can see something. He wants to talk about something. However, he doesn't have the courage to bring it up. So he actually means chase after me, talk to me, and ask me about it yourself. By saying don't follow me, he actually means the opposite. He actually means follow me and force me to answer. Seriously, what a spoiled brat. A maiden's heart. What? Can you really call that reasoning? That's ridiculous. Yeah, can great private and police detectives deduce the emotions and feelings between men and women? They can't, right? Figuring out the feelings of the opposite sexes is even more advanced art than exposing the tricks in difficult crime cases. If you ask me, romance novels have much deeper mysteries than masterpiece mystery novels. I see. Is that how it is? So Nanoka. I'll stand alongside that spoiled brat. He normally loves to bluff, but tonight he's completely tired out from that heated discussion. He probably wants someone to lean on at the moment, and responding to that need is the role of his partner. Ah, sounds passionate. Then I'll leave that old bastard in your hands. Yes, leave it to me. I called out to Kitty as Sans departing back. Huh? What? I wanted to say thanks. Thanks to you, my gloomy mood has cleared up a lot. That's good. Communication is important. After answering with a wink, Kitty-san followed after Dad. Hey. Taking bets on what Rudolph wants to talk about. Natsu could be found in a dimly lit hallway. Now and then, the thunder would crash, but this had no effect on her expression. She looked completely worn out. The discussion that had just taken place between the relatives of the dining hall was repeating itself inside Natsu's mind. Beatrice had proclaimed that in addition to the gold, all of the inheritance and property of the Ushimura family would be given to the person who could solve the riddle. In other words, she planned to undermine the absolute guarantee that Kraus, as the oldest brother, had to succeed the family head. Crashing thunder and freezing rain. We're gonna have that soft-walking sleet. Originally, the other siblings had absolutely no chance to inherit the headship. To them, this proposal by Beatrice was extremely desirable. It was obvious that they would accept it. There was no need to play some clumsy detective game. Natsuki knew that the so-called 19th person, Beatrice, couldn't exist. Naturally, Beatrice was nothing more than a fictional character used to pass the message that Kinzo had written himself. As proof, Kinzo had remained stubbornly neutral as to that letter's authenticity. I mean, he's remaining neutral to everything. He's not really responding to most people. He was completely ignoring these reckless claims that he shouldn't be able to ignore, that he had given up the head's ring. In short, Kinzo had wordlessly admitted that the letter held his own message. Most likely, one of the servants had given Mara the letter. Kinzo had probably worked out an elaborate plan where the dress from the portrait would be prepared, and someone, probably Shannon, would be made to wear and deliver the letter in the umbrella. By doing that, he could make it seem like the witch from the portrait actually existed. Now, if anything, that alone was proof that Kinzo was behind all this. In that case, it was the same as Kinzo trying to butt in on the siblings' private discussion. Then Kinzo, by announcing that he'd give everyone to the person who solved the riddle, could weaken Krause's overwhelming advantage. Now it was certain. Kinzo had eavesdropped on the siblings' discussion in the parlor earlier that day. The plot point that Kinzo is like an unpredictable guy who will do anything, like even really ridiculous, stupid stuff, comes up later. It's essentially used as like a profiling thing in order to like win an argument. I'm not gonna go into further detail, but it's one of the funnier moments in the series. But that's like another 80 hours away. So he'd known how Cross had staved off the attack by the other three, and to make the scales of battle go back into balance, he'd sent out the strange letter which benefited Krause's rivals. He was trying to push this crazy theory so that Rosa, who had a weak position among the siblings because of her age, would join with Ava and Rudolph. Then, with a 3-to-1 advantage, they'd be able to overwhelm Krause yet again and make the ridiculous theories get accepted by force. And by doing that, he gave them the power to resettle what had once been a nearly decided conflict. They had now started repeatedly pressing Krause to pay them a large sum of money, using the condition that all the siblings would guarantee Krause's position as the successor. Talk about advance payments was being brought up again despite having been rejected once. Of course, even without the story about the hidden gold, the Ushimura family's store of wealth was vast. That store of wealth alone was more than enough. Even if the hidden gold was buried forever along with Kinzo's death, there would be more than enough to satisfy. Therefore, even if they weren't all that interested in the gold itself, Kinzo had managed to instill the lifelong fear that, on the off chance that someone found the gold, that person would be granted the headship. And this kind of Achilles heel would definitely be taken advantage of by someone sooner or later. The only person with this fatal weakness was the successor, Krause. The other siblings had found, no, they'd been told by Kinzo, about something that only Krause could lose, and they had thoroughly taken advantage of that. Natsuki, as Krause's only ally in his painful position, and as his wife, wanted to fight alongside him. She kept trying to explain to him that the existence of the gold itself was a farce, and that there was no need for him to compromise. Krause had always told Natsuki. He had told all the siblings. He always said that the hidden gold was nothing more than an illusion created by Kinzo. Therefore, Natsui believed as his wife and had supported her husband on that foundation. Even so, Natsui's words didn't reach Kraus. Even though Natsui had fought so hard and had lent all of her strength, he continued to fight by himself and was trying to compromise with the other 3 siblings. Natsui sadly and weakly wondered why she could not be of use to him, then started getting angry. It happened when everyone decided to take a short break to cool their heads. Natsui had flared up against Kraus. Enraged, she had asked why she could not be useful to him. He had then told her that he wanted to talk about something, and invited her into a room that she was normally not allowed to enter. That room had been sealed with a heavy-looking padlock, and just looking at it had given her an uncomfortable feeling. Looks like they're in a hallway to me. Something. Maybe not. There's no need for you to worry about anything said by those 3, or even the suspicious person who calls herself Beatrice. After all, the gold is just a ruse created by Father. There's no way something like that could be found. Your position as the successor is a solid fact. What are you afraid of? Caress removed the padlock on the door. He then motioned for Natsui to enter. Enter. But what is this? There's something I want you to see. I've never shown you this before. Now they're going to the room. Natsui timidly opened the door with a dubious expression on her face. It was pitch black. She searched for a switch to turn on the lights, but since this was her first time in the room, she didn't know where it was. Kraus entered behind her, pushing her in, and when he closed the door before turning on the lights, the 2 were swallowed up by the darkness. I'm just waiting for that sound effect to finish. Only the sound of Kraus locking the door rang out through the dark. What are you doing? The lights. I'm turning them on now. Wait. Just as he said, when Kraus pushed a switch on the wall, a flickering light turned on and lit up the room. Natsui had her breath taken away. The room had no windows, and at a glance it appeared to be empty. In the middle of the room, a small round table had been set. The lights brightened only that table, as if it were the leading part in a play. On top of the table, a red tablecloth of elaborate design had been set out, covered with dust. And on top of that, something about the size of a grown man's arm had been set down. That something took Natsui's breath away. It's a gold ingot of incredible purity. Without this, no one would have believed in the legend of the gold. It was an ingot of solid gold. Even in the faint light, it sparkled with a noble and dignified glint. This is not a proper ingot. I don't even know whether it was cast inside or outside the country. It took a high level of skill to make the purest of solid gold ingots. And in order to verify that purity, it was standard to have the original foundry and the name of the bank that guaranteed it imprinted on the gold. However, this ingot did not have that kind of seal. This mysterious gold bar had come from an unknown foundry. Look here. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a bar of gold. Natsui, following Kraus's words, timidly approached the ingot. Right there. Kraus pointed at the surface of the ingot. Natsui concentrated on that section. Right there was the thin imprint of the one-winged eagle crest. Natsui's breath was taken away once again. That's right. This is the legendary ingot that Father said he received from the witch, that the president of Maruso witnessed and was allowed to select at random to take back with him. To gain the trust of the fixers in the business world. I had to use all possible means to find it. I found it before the other siblings could. How could, then, the legend of Father's gold is? It actually exists. The gold that Ushimura Kinzo received from Beatrice actually exists. Impossible, so it really does exist. So we have one ingot here, which you could take as proof. So write down on your fact sheet, the gold exists. Natsuki was shocked. Kraus had always said that Kinzo's gold was just a fabrication, so she believed it, as his wife. However, the reality was different. Since he held definite proof, he had been more certain than any of the other siblings that the legend of the gold was true. Honestly, it'd be the funniest thing if he took a knife and the gold was one of those cakes. Because of this, Kraus was deeply frightened at the possibility that someone other than himself would find the gold he'd failed to find, costing him everything. To Natsuki, this truth was more than enough to split open her heart. She thought that, as Kraus's wife, she should be his closest confidant, which was why she had selflessly supported him. And yet, he had hid this fact from her until today. Why? Have I been so undeserving of your trust? That has never been my intention. There was simply no need to tell you. That's a really bad excuse. Is that all a wife means to you? Calm down. Becoming passionate easily is one of your bad habits. Kraus sounds like a terrible husband. Wow, you feel those emotions. You're so unstable. You're the one who's making me like that, aren't you? I've been supporting you as wife ever since I married into this family. For your sake, I threw away the family I was born into. And I've been offering up my heart and body to serve you. And in return, this is what I get? How could you... Kraus grimaced, looking annoyed. His expression effectively communicated how much he disliked this part of Natsui, even if he didn't say it out loud. What an ass. It doesn't look like I'll be of any use to you anymore. That's fine. I can resolve the troubles with the siblings by myself. I don't need your help. That's wrong. This is the Ushimura family's problem. It's true that I'm not permitted to wear the family crest on my body, but I'm still your wife. Even so, are you saying I'm not capable of helping you? Are you? I especially wouldn't want to risk getting you involved. It would probably make your headaches even worse than they are now. Take a rest for today. The siblings will deal with the siblings' problems. It has nothing to do with you. That is all. Out of all the siblings, Aba's probably my favorite. Kraus is kind of just a dick. Aba's interesting. A dull headache tormented Natsui. Rose is interesting too, even though she slaps her child. No matter what medicine she took, no matter what sense she burned, it wouldn't heal. In fact, simply wandering alone through the dark corridors and listening to the sound of the rain seemed to be a better cure. I may be Natsui, but I was never Ushimura Natsui. I have been despised and treated as a borrowed womb, and insulted when I couldn't even fill that role. Even so, I have tried to properly perform my duties as a wife, but now even my husband has rejected me. I've done my best raising my daughter, as if it were the last job left to me. However, I have had no release from my anger and sadness, and they've caused me to subconsciously strain that relationship too. Because I've been excessively strict in Jessica's education, she dislikes me thoroughly. She despises me for having no interest in anything but grades. Umineko has an anime, yeah. The Nippa girl is Rika from Higurashi. There's some connection between Higurashi and Umineko, and Rika and Umineko in that sense as well. So yeah, kind of. The Umineko anime never finished, unfortunately. It also wasn't really that good. It could have been longer for what it was. It skipped over a lot of stuff. It accidentally showed some things it wasn't supposed to show, in the sense that it contradicts the actual truth behind things. Essentially, without getting into details, certain characters are shown in scenes that they shouldn't be in. The game is just better? I would say yes. If you're the kind of person who's like, reading all these visual novels sounds very intimidating, and I don't know if I want to commit the time, I would say watch the anime. Then after that, start reading from visual novel 5 and go all the way through till 8, unless you really want to reread 1 through 4, which is what the anime covers. That's what I did back in the day. I watched the anime. I forget if I immediately... No, I think I did read all 4 of the VNs, but most people, I think, might just be better off going from 5. I don't know. It depends on if you want some time to get used to the VN format. The VNs have a lot of really good music, too. The Umineko OST is amazing. And obviously, you're not going to see that much in the anime. Though it does have nice opening music as well. And kind of a memeable ending song. Sung by Kinzo's voice actor. No, that's not good. Despite it all, I must help my husband and beat back the schemes of the other greeting siblings. The family head won't be around much longer. Eventually, Kraus will succeed the head, and the next successor will be Jessica. Strictly speaking, the man who enters the family by marrying Jessica will become the next head, but it all comes to the same thing. Man, Higurashi technically comes before Umineko, but they're almost entirely separate stories, even though Higurashi is noted as 1 and 2 in the When They Cry series, and Umineko's 3 and 4. So if you want a more solvable mystery, do Umineko. If you want something that's more horror focused, watch Higurashi. I have to make Jessica an excellent successor whom everyone will accept as worthy to take over the Ushimura family. In the days to come, that greedy Ushimura Eva will probably be plotting to find some fault with the main family. And if all goes as she plans, Jessica will be dragged down from the succession with George set up in her place. It is regrettable, but George is a man, and even more, has matured as a person. Compared to Jessica, who is right in the middle of her rebellious period and whose grades are slightly below average, it can be seen at a glance who is more fit to succeed the head. So in order to secure Jessica's position, I need to turn her into an excellent person. After doing that, I want to find her an excellent husband, worthy of the excellent person she'll become. A wonderful man who will truly accept Jessica, and stay with her through all of life's joys and sorrows. Was Natsu trying to entrust her daughter with fulfilling some desire of her own? Natsu thought back to the days when she'd had no choice but to marry into the Ushimura family, because of that unavoidable fate. By the way, all of this is essentially like, Natsu probably says like 2 or 3 lines to herself in the anime. She's very underdeveloped there. She's one of the less developed characters in general, I'd say, but she's like so forgettable and ignorable in the anime. She had tried to block that from her memory. She had consciously forgotten it, and had actively attended to the life she'd been given as Ushimura Natsu. Yeah, there's a lot more character development in here, which is really nice. In Higurashi, essentially each arc usually focuses more on different characters. Umineko has a bit of that. Each arc is definitely focused differently, but not as many characters get spotlights. And in so doing, she had built up a new life. But just now, it felt like all that had been casually rejected. How should I think as I live my life? I do not know. I actually don't really know what the Umineko... I don't really spin-offs, but there's like some like side novels that are canon that I actually haven't read through. I'd kind of like to get to those at one point. I read a couple hours of one of them once, but I never got back to the rest of it. It had a lot of new characters, which is a really weird thing considering what Umineko is. Natsu helplessly rested her head against the glass of the window. And trust me, Umineko will have a lot of characters by the end. Like, frankly, for some people, keeping track of this is probably already kind of difficult. The glass, which was cool thanks to the raindrops beating against it, felt somehow refreshing, even though it should have been emotionless. Right then, it seemed to be the only thing that could understand Natsuhi. At that point, even if someone had appeared, Natsuhi didn't intend to pay any attention to them. But she did pay attention, because it was her beloved daughter. Don't worry, things are gonna happen today. Oh, it's you, Mom. What the heck are you doing in a place like this? Oh, you were a ghost. Just like always, her words were rough and not at all like a girl's. Instinctively, words of rebuke rose to Natsuhi's throat. However, their strength gave out, and they didn't escape her lips. Jessica, forgive me, but my headache is awful. Please leave me be. I see. Jessica was seeing her mother in a position of feebleness for the first time, so she was considerably disconcerted. Until just now, she'd been filled with contempt for all the parents, including her mother. But now those feelings had been completely swept away. Her mother's utterly exhausted face had wiped them all out. In its place, the words George had told her floated back up in her mind. Our parents are doing their best in their own way, and because their families are counting on them, they can't afford to keep everything pleasant, and have a heavy responsibility to fight. Maybe her mother had been standing around in this dimly lit hallway, because no one had tried to understand that part of her. Jessica hated her mother, so she had no intention of speaking kindly to Natsuhi just because she was looking a bit frail. So when she attempted to speak kindly to her mother anyway, she had to clench her fists and gather up the words from deep in her heart. It sounds like you really got your hands full with that meeting thing. It has nothing to do with you. Please go somewhere else. Is your headache bad? Should I go get some medicine? You don't have to trouble yourself. Please, leave me alone. Natsuhi wasn't being cold. She just wanted her daughter to go as far away so that she wouldn't have to bump against Natsuhi's own short temper. But there was no chance that Jessica would realize this. Okay. Jessica hung her head, looking sad. Seeing that expression, Natsuhi recognized the kindness that Jessica was trying to muster. She gave her head a small shake to drive away her unkind feelings. Then I'll leave. I'll be with the other cousins, so I don't get in the way of the adults. See you later. Wait there. She called Jessica, who was trying to leave and looked lonely, to a stop. What? Thank you for being so considerate. It isn't good of me to go to sleep and leave you alone. Don't talk like that. You'll bring bad luck. I've made you worried, but I'm okay now. I will go. If I let my daughter see me this feeble any longer, I'll only make her feel more uneasy. Yeah, all you really need to do is just say thanks for the consideration. It means a lot. That's probably good enough. With that thought in mind, Natsuhi left Jessica with the words of gratitude and made to depart. This time, Jessica called out to her mother's back. Natsuhi stopped and turned around, asking what business Jessica had with her. But Jessica herself didn't know why she'd stopped her mother, and for a while, she smiled wryly, muttering to herself as she hesitated over what to say. She was poking around in her pocket when her hand touched something, and she took it out. Hey, Mom. I was given a charm today. What was it? A charm against magic? I'm pretty sure that you were supposed to hang it from your doorknob, I think? I forget. There's no point in me having it, so I'll let you take it. It was the scorpion charm that Maria had given her on the beach. Although she heard of its various effects from Maria, Jessica's mind had gone blank, and she was just barely able to say even that much. Umineko actually has Toho in it. In the original VN, it has a Furipet Danplay at one point, and in the anime, they have a different song, but someone dresses up as Marissa, thought out. Like, it's obvious about it too. It doesn't hide it. I won't give the context for why yet. It'll come up in episode 2 later. Jessica, thinking that her mother probably wouldn't accept it anyway, immediately drew back the hand that she had stuck out, grasping the charm. So when Natsu came back to take it, she was extremely shocked. What is this? Some kind of prize toy? Well, I think it's something like that. I guess you wouldn't really expect a charm that looks like a toy to do anything. But her mother took the charm from where she grasped it in her hand. Thank you. I'll take good care of it. Sometime soon, it has changed. Why don't I give you a charm that was important to me when I was a child? It's not like that's why I gave it to you. But, well, if you really say so, then I will rest for now. My headache is awful. Try not to stay up too late. Sure. She'll stay up late. Natsu put the charm in her pocket and turned away. She then disappeared into the dark hall. We're slowly getting places, I promise. It seems the weather will be like this all day tomorrow after all. Dang, this makes the good weather we had earlier feel like a lie. George, Aniki, and I were killing time in front of the parlor television. At that point, Jessica returned. Her face was still blank, but it looked like she'd calmed down a little since we'd last seen her. Is Maria still in front of the portrait? Nope. She just came back and she's sleeping over there on the sofa. It's getting pretty late for her after all. Looking at the clock, I saw it was a little past 10 p.m. Even if we were planning to stay up all night, it was about time to head back to our room. I mean, you've got the whole guest house to yourself. That's honestly really great. Well, my mom did have a room prepared for us in the mansion. What do we do? I'd rather head back to the guest house. Oh, I guess they're still in the mansion right now, right? They haven't gone back yet. Going by what we saw of our parents, I think it'd be better if we weren't in the mansion. I agree. Feels like they're telling us kids to mind their own business and stay out of their way. Let's be good little boys and girls and do that. As we were talking about this, Aunt Rosa came into the parlor. She was looking all over restlessly, probably trying to find Maria. Aunt Rosa, if you're looking for Maria, she's over there on the sofa. Thank you. My, she's out cold. We must move her to her bed. If you'd like, I'll carry her over to a bed. Thanks, that would be wonderful. Are you all heading back to the guest house? Or are you going to stay in the room Natsu and Nason had prepared here? We were just talking about that. We just decided to head over to the guest house. I see. Then could I ask you to take Maria with you? I'd feel much more reassured if she stays with all of you cousins. Behind those words, she seemed to be concealing some regret that the adults, herself included, had deeply hurt Maria's feelings. Leave it to us, Aunt Rosa. After all, we do have an expert at accompanying Maria with us. Are you talking about me? I couldn't do it myself. We'll need everyone together. That's right. Battler, weren't you the one who hit it off with Maria when you were messing around earlier? As we said this, Aunt Rosa smiled, looking truly happy. Thank you, everyone. It looks like our meeting will last until very late. So while I'm sorry to burden you like this, I'll be counting on you all to take care of Maria. Hey, Maria, are you sound asleep? We're going back to the guest house. Maria muttered something indistinct, rolled over, and fell back asleep. It looked like she was sleeping deeply. She's really out cold. I'd hate to wake her. Right, I'll carry her. Just through the rain, huh? Through a typhoon. Maria's body was much lighter than it looked. I lifted her up and put her on George Aniki's back. It was raining hard outside, and Aniki couldn't hold an umbrella and carry Maria at the same time. Looked like Aunt Rosa would come with us as far as the guest house to help out. However, when she heard Uncle Krause's voice call to her, she had no choice but to return. And that's a problem. I have to go back now. Is everyone returning to the guest house? After we left the hall on the way to the entrance, the door to the servant room opened and Shannon Chen stepped out. It's grown very dark, so allow me to guide you. That'd be great, Shannon Chen. George Code is going to carry Mario there. Did you hold an umbrella for him? Yes, certainly. Shannon Chen brought umbrellas for each of us and a flashlight to guide the way. As we opened the door, the downpour was quite terrific. It looked like we wouldn't have any spare time to make a pleasant walk and enjoy the nighttime rose garden. Aniki, is she too heavy? Want me to carry her? It's okay. Now I can at least carry Maria-chan. I'm truly grateful. Please take care of Maria. Sure, you got it. Then I guess this is good night, Aunt Rosa. Then I will see them over there and return here. Yes, please. Aunt Rosa watched us leave. What are you looking at? Maria. I'm sorry for everything. Rosa's mumbly voice didn't reach the person in question, nor any of the kids, but disappeared beneath the sound of the rain. Purring. After cutting through the rainy rose garden, we arrived at the guest house. If only I'd applied for the position of Maria carrier. Then I would have gotten a chance to have Shannon-chan's huge boobs rubbing all over my arm. But that's not why I did it. It's a misunderstanding. I thought that if I didn't walk like this, George-sama would get all wet. Oh, Ballard. Quit boobling and go in. After being urged on by Jessica, we folded up our umbrellas and went into the guest house. Actually, leaving the SDM. We're entering the doghouse. Has anyone gotten their clothes wet? I can bring some towels if you want. You don't need to worry about us that much. Thanks. Thanks, Shanna-chan. Ah, that's right. We were planning to play cards or something. Would you care to join us for a bit? Huh? Who had the night shift on today's schedule? I believe we had a special schedule during the family conference. Also, I think a few alterations have been made, so I'll go and check. Wait, if you have to go all the way back to the mansion to find out, don't force yourself. Oh, that's alright. I can find out from the servant room in the guest house. Please excuse me for a short while. Shana-chan gave a quick bow and went into the guest house servant room. The rest of us headed for the cousin room and decided to put Maria to bed for the time being. Maria was sleeping very deeply, and there was absolutely no sign of her eyes opening. For now, we'd get some soft drinks out of the room's refrigerator and drink those while playing cards or something. Oh, Kanai-kun. And you're here too, Genji-sama. What's happened with tonight's shift? Cross-sama has given an order. He made some sizable changes to the shift schedule. Indeed. Goto-san now has the night shift at the mansion. Shannon and Cannon have the night shift in the guest house. Misawa-san and I have an order to sleep in the guest house. Just now, a phone call came, saying that once you arrived, you were also to remain here for the rest of the night. Huh? That certainly is a sizable change. The shifts at the guest house and the mansion have been completely reversed, haven't they? Originally, Shannon and Cannon had been assigned the night shift in the mansion, while the night shift in the guest house, where all the relatives were staying, had been assigned to Gota, who had an abundance of experience in entertaining. Misawa should have been sleeping at the guest house, while Genji should have been sleeping in the mansion. However, it seemed that Kraus had suddenly ordered that the schedule be modified. The shifts at the guest house and the mansion had all been reversed, and Genji was spending the night at the guest house. It's probably because of Beatrice-sama's letter. Why, probably. After such a mysterious letter appeared, it was only natural that Kraus-sama would suspect one of us. We served directly under the master, so Kraus-sama tried as best as he could to keep us far away from the family conference. Genji, Shannon, and Kanin were all permitted to wear the Ushimura family crest, the one-winged eagle, as the servants who served directly under Kinzo. Of course, since they were working for the Ushimura family, they had to obey anyone's orders, but their only boss was Kinzo. Since only Kinzo held the right to employ them, even Kraus could not have them dismissed of his own accord. Because of this, Kraus and the others often viewed these servants as Kinzo's underlings and shunned them. And in fact, Kinzo seldom let anyone other than them enter his study. This sudden shift change was probably a clear expression of the sense of mistrust that had caused. Considering the time Kinzo had left to live, this would definitely be the last family conference before the problem of the inheritance came up. On top of that, the mysterious letter that claimed to be from Beatrice had dropped in out of the blue. Kraus definitely wanted to keep Kinzo's loyal subjects away from the table of such a delicate and important discussion. If you would excuse me, I'll go rest. If anything happens, call me immediately. I guess tonight is a special case, after all. Ooh. Yes, certainly, Genji-sama. Genji nodded back, went behind a screen, took off his jacket, and slowly began to relax after a day's worth of tension. The ones who just returned now, were they the children? Yes. The other relatives are having a conference in the mansion. It looked like it would drag on for quite some time. Then we've got it easy. It's already this late, and there's this weather. The rest of the relatives will probably spend the night in the rooms in the mansion. Yes, probably. I'm only saying this because Genji-sama isn't around. But I'm a little happy I was sent to the guest house, I guess. Oh? Why's that? Because you can stay away from Madam and Eva-sama, those bullies? Or do you have another reason? It's not as though I have another reason. I see. Then let's do our best together with our night shift. I'm counting on you, Nason. Just now, I was asked to go to the children's room and play with them. Shannon hung her head apologetically, gazing at Cannon, uncertainly. Cannon didn't try to meet her eyes and spoke curtly as he sighed. It looked like he didn't plan on indulging his sister. You can't. You were assigned to the night shift. Besides which, it isn't necessary for furniture like us to respond to an invitation to play. You understand, right? Yes, I do understand. Shannon's shoulders drooped slightly. She had already expected that Conan, a stickler for rules, would say something like that, but she still seemed a little discouraged. As Conan flipped through a logbook, he spoke without facing Shannon. That means the children will be waiting for you. You'll have to apologize and tell them you have the night shift and won't be able to stay with them. Go and come back. Huh? Yes. I'll go apologize and come back. Shannon hurriedly stood from his seat before her brother's mood could change and flew out of the servant room before giving a quick bow. Just to reiterate, they're not actually siblings. I don't think at any point it's stated that they are so far, but I think once a couple streams back it said they just refer to each other like that. But when they read it like this, it makes you think they actually are, but that's not the case. I'm just gonna get my water, gonna refill water, use the bathroom. I'll be right back. There we go. Okay. I don't actually have coffee out, unfortunately, but I'll be going out to get some in an hour or two. I'm in the gas station out in town. I haven't actually brewed coffee at my house for a couple weeks. I'm just having coffee from out there. Good stuff. As he watched her go, Kanan took a single deep breath. Genji's voice came from beyond the screen. Kanan, I will be here so you can go too. Genji-sama, Chan was the only one called. It's not as though I was invited. That is only because you were not there at the time. If you had been, you would have been invited as well. It is good to play as a child from time to time. No, such a thing is not necessary for me. Human children may have a need to play, but we are furniture. Is that so? Nei-chan is also furniture. Why is Daiose and Higurashi? She's definitely large there. Even if she pretends to be a person, it only hurt her later. I know exactly who you mean, though. I understand that, so I'll try not to get too close to people, that's all. Genji did not say anything after that. After a while, he stood up and used a pot of hot water to make powdered cocoa, serving some to Kanan as well. Kutaka's also in there. Kutaka's and Higurashi. Hey, is that for real? I had no clue. Dumbass, you're too loud. You'll wake Mario up. Pablo was so surprised that he yelled obnoxiously and scattered his cards everywhere. His voice caused Mario to turn over once, but she soon fell back into a deep sleep. Jessica gave him a jab and he lowered his voice. Still, seriously, now that you mention it, they really did have that kind of atmosphere, didn't they? Now I see. So George on key is... George couldn't be seen anywhere in the room. A short while ago, when Shauna came into the room, George suddenly said that he'd forgotten something in the mansion and needed to go back and get it. Here. Here's context. Of course, that isn't context at all. The entire point is it's not context. But it's funny. And it does happen. He's dead. The Colonel's dead. It's actually a statue. That's not obvious. That still probably leaves some questions, but go watch Higurashi, I guess, and come back. George couldn't be seen anywhere in the room. A short while ago, when Shauna came into the room, George suddenly said that he'd forgotten something in the mansion and needed to go back and get it. Shauna said she would guide him, just like she had on the way to the guest house, and the two of them departed together. Well, there's actually been signs of it for a while now. You know, questions about hobbies and favorite things. I always thought it was a bit much for a passing interest, and look what's happened now. Come to think of it, I get the feeling George Anaki's always been overly nice to Shauna-chan. Now I get it. Got a crush. Good to have the cat nearby during transitions. According to the weather report, it looks like it'll be at its worst tonight. The ripoto. It also seems it'll last all day tomorrow, though it should get a little better. Really? Then maybe the boat won't arrive until the day after tomorrow. I hope that doesn't interfere with your work on Monday. I already knew that the typhoon would be coming beforehand. Just in case, I made sure to have any plans for Monday, so it's okay. I may not look it, but I really am the type who can plan ahead in a schedule. George puffed out his chest, acting proud. Compared to the calm appearance George always had as the oldest cousin, he now looked amusingly like a little kid. Shannon chuckled at this abrupt contrast. It's no surprise you're so well prepared, as someone who will bring prosperity to his company someday. Well, making a company prosper really is a tough job. Money isn't the only thing that's important. I learned that well when studying under my father. Making a company prosper is like owning a castle and leading your subordinates. My dad really loves reading about great leaders during the warring periods of Japan, a hobby that's probably influenced by the fact that he shares Toyotomi Hideyoshi's name. Much of his philosophy on managing businesses comes from talking about them. Did you know? Takeda Shingen, who is feared as the leader of the strongest cavalry corps. Oh my god, George, stop talking about this. Who cares? This is not how you get girls to like you. And the warring periods started out with his troops in complete disarray and didn't have the kind of strong leadership necessary to utilize them well. Is that true? That's a little unexpected. In order to unite his troops, Shingen showed his excellent leadership in many ways. For example, when a soldier succeeded well in battle, he would immediately honor them with a medal. Normally that kind of thing was put off until after the war, and they were all awarded at once. He continued this diligently while in the field of battle, and immediately showing his appreciation for his troops' military exploits motivated them in an extremely significant fashion. Also, whenever one of his troops was brought down by an illness, he would be the first to rush up to them and care for them, and so on. Takeda Shingen wasn't just the man who led the strongest cavalry corps in the warring period. He was the person who cared the most for his troops throughout that era. And because he was that kind of person, all of his troops went along with him. The truth was, Shannon had already heard this story several years ago. But whenever a discussion of his father led to this sort of topic, George would always glow and look like he was having a good time. Though Shannon just smiled without interrupting, urging him to continue. Of course, in a capitalist world, money determines both your strength and the height of your fortifications. Now you're talking about capitalism. Man. That stuff is crypto. Crypto George. But you can't build up a castle or succeed in war by yourself. Such things can only be accomplished with the support of many subordinates, by borrowing their strength. After understanding this, when I look at my father's back, I realize how immature I am. I can clearly see how much competition he had to overcome before building up all he has now. George-sama, you truly look up to your father. I'm jealous. Sorry, that's not how I meant it. I'm sorry, that's not how I meant it either. The two of them awkwardly looked at their feet. Shauna had no parents. She'd been brought up in an orphanage owned by Kinzo called the Fukuin House. Under the guidance of Kinzo, their honorary director, the orphanage offered members who excelled a chance for on-the-job serving experience. If their efforts met with Kinzo's approval, they'd be able to leave the orphanage and work as servants for the Ushigura family. This was considered to be the highest honor for those who lived in the orphanage. Servants from the Fukuin house all took names with the character On in them while they served. So Shannon wasn't her real name, same went for Kanon. All the members of the Fukuin house were orphans. At least they were all people who had been separated from their parents under special circumstances. Because of this, the orphans had been taught to think of each other as their only family. That's why it seemed so natural to both of them when Canon called Shannon his sister. See, like I was saying before, they're like honorary siblings, essentially. So think of it however you will. And while both Shannon and Canon were working in the mansion today, there were several other servants possessing the On character names, such as Manon and Lennon, who often worked in a rotation schedule. However, there were not many servants who stayed with the Ushimura family for long. It was standard for them to quit after 3 years. Afterlife fan out one point. You know, I don't think you ever, I guess I suppose, I don't think you ever see these characters. Unless they're like in one of the side novels I haven't read. They basically never come up. These are just like throwaway names. So you could probably say that Shannon, who had been working for 10 years, was a notable exception to the rule. Working as a servant for the Ushimura family was a heavy burden to bear, but the pay wasn't bad at all. I would hope so. Working for a full 3 years would earn more than what was needed to enter mainstream society. That was why, even though the orphans realized what a harsh task working for the Ushimura family was, they still hoped to be accepted. Maybe the fact that Shannon managed to continue working for 10 years wasn't because she had more willpower than the other servants. Maybe she'd gotten stuck working for 10 years because she didn't have the courage to say she wanted to quit. Kinzo couldn't even trust his own blood relatives, and these excellent servants from the Fukuin house were the only ones he could rely on. Because of that, Kinzo would sometimes allow them to wear the family crest, as servants under his direct control, and have them work close to him. You've been working here for almost 10 years now, right? You must have saved up a lot of money by now. I wonder, it's not like there's anything in particular I'd like to buy. After all, a few million yen isn't enough to live off for the rest of your life. So the only reason you've been working all this time wasn't to hit some target sum? Yes, that's right. I have nowhere to go outside this mansion, and I've been getting along well with my lady and the other servants. The madam does scold me sometimes, but caring for the roses, including the mansion, is fun. But that can't be your entire life, Shana-chan. No, Sayo-chan. Oh no, real name. Shannon cast her eyes downward when she heard her real name. She understood what George was trying to say and fell silent. It's something I've learned as I continue to study even after becoming an adult and a full-fledged member of society. A human's life is not as monotonous or short as we thought when we were kids. All school-age kids have certain fears they can't shake. They wonder whether they'll live the rest of their lives like sleepy classes after a monotonous and boring school day, spending their time in a carefree laziness without anything interesting happening until it's all over. However, life's only like that for underage students. Compared to a human's life, the time they spend as students is nothing more than a blink of the eye, a period where they break through the shells of their immaturity. The inside of the shell may be a hot, suffocating, and boring world, but the world beyond that shell is vast and filled with limitless possibilities. So far, your life has been trapped inside the shell called Shannon. I think you're under the mistaken impression that your life will continue like this forever. That's... Shannon couldn't deny those words. She'd been unable to harbor any clear doubts about her lifestyle. And since she'd never had any hope or goals for changing herself, she'd lazily continued living the way she always had. And if asked whether this life was satisfying, she wouldn't have been able to nod. She may have been intentionally averting her eyes from the truth. Without George's admonishments, she would have continued pretending not to notice as her real life slipped away bit by bit, neglected. George-sama, is it wrong for me to continue living this way? Yeah, it is. Oh, and by the way, didn't you break one of our rules just now? George immediately gave a strict answer, then broke out into a mischievous smile. Shannon already knew what she was being chided for, and she hung her head again, apparently embarrassed. Didn't you promise not to use Sama when the two of us were alone? I couldn't obey that as a promise, but if it was an order, I would have to obey it. Because I'm furniture. Then it's an order. Yes, certainly, George-san. Georgie-san. As Shannon hung her head, her face red. She said George's name again, this time filling it with San. Yes, that's fine, Sayo-chan. George smiled at Shannon, no, Sayo, to praise her small act of bravery. This sort of change alone made it clear how far back the relationship must have stretched. For a long while, the two talked as if the weather raging about them didn't even enter their thoughts. They talked about the many memories they built during the relationship that no one else knew about. Every once in a while, a flash of lightning would attempt to interrupt them, but this could sully neither the roses nor the time they spent blushing at each other. Is this one of those long transitions with the glass breaking thing? Oh, it just takes a while. Yeah, that's right. I have something I wanted to show you. Does Higurashi often retcon character's death? Yeah, that's probably one of the nastiest scenes in the series, and I look away when that scene plays. Um, Not so much a retcon as it is. You'll see different scenarios play out. If you want to put it simply, a way to think about it going into it is that you'll see different time loops. You can think about it like that for now. And I won't say whether that's accurate or not, because I don't want to spoil anything about the nature of Higurashi. And Umineko is the same. So, if someone happens to die here in this first episode of Umineko, they may not be dead for good. We may see them again later. We may see events play out differently. Yep, it's like a game saving and reloading. It's different games, different save files. You can think of it like that too. It's something like that. George, who had been speaking eloquently, suddenly started to shudder. Watching him, Shannon started to guess something. George typically searched through his pocket. Something got caught in the depths of his pocket, and just like the stuttering George, it took a little while to get it out. I hate that scene with Rika. Higurashi is extremely graphic in that sense. Umineko has some bad stuff too, mind you. Yeah, that's why watching the anime can be kind of hard. It was a very small box covered in a deep blue velvet. That peculiar shape was enough to tell anyone what was resting inside. Shauna had prepared her heart somewhat, certain beforehand that this was what he'd been planning. But even so, when she actually saw it, she couldn't avoid blushing once more. George opened the small box, took something out, and held it for Shannon to take. I want you to take this. I, couldn't accept something so valuable. You can't take it? No, I'm unworthy. Sayo, this isn't a request. It's an order. Take this ring, okay? I order you to marry me. But if it's an order, I cannot disobey. Ooh. Yeah, that's right. Well done. Yokuyatta. Irai irai. Shauna, not wanting to show her bright red face, timidly accepted the ring from George's hand while still staring at the ground. That ring wasn't a simple accessory. It was a noble object, meant since ancient times to be offered to a special woman under certain circumstances. Special circumstances. He gave her the blue feather. Therefore, while George could order her to take it, he could not order anything beyond that. Are there at least funny deaths? Funny deaths? Yeah. I can think of a specific one. I can think of a really specific death that comes out of nowhere and is kind of like stupid. Because it ends like that entire arc. And it's like the character just does something incredibly dumb and dies. I think it's part 2 in Higurashi, I forget. Anything beyond that would depend, not on an order, but on Shannon's, no, Sayo's own will. So from here on, I'm not ordering you anymore. Sayo, I want you to give me your answer by tomorrow, without using words. You understand? How should I won't order you any further, so this isn't an order. But a ring is something you put on your finger, after all. If you like it, you can just put it on any finger you choose. Shauna had only pretended not to know. She already understood what he wanted her to do. But she was standing at a huge crossroads of her life. Look how late it's gotten. Let's call it a day. George stood away from Shannon, acting just a bit bluntly. I could probably order you to wear it on your left hand. You might be timid and independent enough to actually obey that kind of an order. But I want at least this last step to be done by your own will, Sayo. Understand? It's sweet. Yes. So, that's my order. I want you to think about it well tonight and show me your answer tomorrow. Shannon nodded back. The day was the culmination of their many days spent together. This moment certainly didn't come as a surprise to Shannon. We should be getting back to the guest house soon. If we take any longer, we'll make anyone worry about us. Who here has read a mystery novel before? People would be in 2 different camps right now. Oh, I'm sorry, I just remembered something had to do with the mansion, so, I have to go back to the mansion. At a time like this? Is that true? George stared into Shannon's face as he laughed mischievously. He definitely saw through Shannon's lie. However, when he saw how she felt, he could sort of understand that she might be so embarrassed that she'd want to be alone. So, because George realized the meaning behind Shannon's lie, he accepted it. Though I think, hold on, I should probably shrink the chat overlay a little bit and like, is this still going to be readable? I think it will be. That still seems readable, yeah. Do let me know if not. Need a little bit bigger. I know I could move Umineko like over to the left and like fill up the black space, but that feels weird. I can still read it in the OBS preview, so it should be readable at 1080p. For sure, even after I pulled the VOD. I record in pretty high quality. Shannon entered the entrance hall to the mansion with a tottering gate. Gate? I think I've been chastised for pronouncing that word wrong. Just say walk. A mixture of exaltation and uncertainty gave her a feeling that she couldn't easily describe. It swelled up in her chest until it felt like she was about to burst. Need more water. Yep, I've got a VOD channel, so if you ever need to like catch up on the old Umineko episodes or anything like that, it's right here. Might be linked down below too. I'm not sure offhand. Okay. After stopping for a second in front of the servant room to take a deep breath and calm her heart, she opened the door. Inside, Goda, who had been ordered to take the midnight shift at the mansion tonight, was absorbed in a worn-out crossword puzzle magazine. He looked up for an instant to see if one of the family had come, but when he realized it was a fellow servant, he returned to his puzzle as if nothing had happened. Yeah, I'm trying to like make this as accessible as possible. After all the characters got introduced, I kind of went back over them real quick, and I might periodically do that. Like all the red ones up here are the family members. We have the servants here. Dr. Nanjo is not really a servant or a family member. The children of Kinzo are presented in birth order. So Kraus is oldest, Rose is youngest. So these are all Kinzo's children. These are their spouses that married into the family. We don't know who Rose's dad is. We don't know who Maria's dad, Rose's partner, was. Then these are their kids. So it's actually very clearly laid out if you know the rules behind it. And the servants don't really have any like rhyme or reason to them. Hi again. Genji-sama told me to come and help you. Ah, is that so? That's a relief. I was just about to go check that the mansion was fully locked up, but I felt uneasy about leaving this room unmanned. After all, Cross-sama and the others' meeting looks as though it will continue for quite some time. They might request some tea at any moment. That's true. Then what shall we do? Should I watch over? In that case, forgive me, Shannon-san, but I'll ask that you patrol the mansion. I will stay here, awaiting the family's orders. Yes. Shannon was slightly disgusted. Even though she'd come here to help out as a favor, she was casually being forced to do the job of the person actually on duty. Yep. He's kind of a shithead. Goda's a bit of a shithead. Furthermore, after one-sidedly forcing that task on her, Goda returned to his magazine once again and became immersed in his crossword puzzle. Wow. Shannon bowed her head as a token sign of respect for her elder, then left the room to patrol the mansion. Thanks to her being a bit ticked off, she managed to suppress that floaty feeling she'd been having until just now. And anyway, she couldn't let Genji or Kanen see her looking like this. She wanted a little time to herself until her heart calmed down, so maybe going on patrol wouldn't be so bad. She began to hear the tumultuous voices of the family discussion coming from the dining hall. Someone was speaking at great length, only to be interrupted by someone else. This second person also began to speak in a very long, drawn-out fashion until yet another person interrupted. That kept on repeating. It was as though their displeasure was seeping out through their voices. She'd been told to go to the guest house, so it would be bad if Kraus discovered her. Thinking this, Shannon dashed past the dining hall. Then she went along a prearranged route through the dark mansion, checking that all the locks were secure. She walked down the hall, checking each window. There were no humans on Aokijima other than those connected to the family, so locking up didn't really serve much of a purpose. No one had been in the habit of locking up at the Ushimura head family, at least not until Natsuhi had scolded them for being careless. The metal fixtures on the windows were ice cold, and as she checked them one by one, the glow in her heart seemed to cool down. Oh, you can't see Felix, can you? Yeah, there he is. Things are almost ready to happen. At the time, she thought she saw something twinkling across the hall. Twinkling? How could anything be twinkling through the darkness of the hall? She figured she must have been imagining it, but she still held her breath. Grasping a curtain, she fearfully gazed down the hall. However, other than the occasional crack of thunder brightening the hallway, she was unable to glimpse any flicker again. Gotta catch my breath here. I'm reading too fast. I have a hard time slowing down when reading. It's like I'm trying to speed read the game, speed run it. Reading Umineko out loud speedrun. It must have been her imagination after all. Maybe her heart was so agitated that she'd seen something that didn't even exist. Shannon went back to checking the windows. However, a certain unnerving memory was resurrected in the back of her mind. It was that ghost story which had been passed down amongst the servants who served the Ushimura head family. The mansion had two different masters, one of the day and one of the night. Beatrice, the master of the night, would sometimes fly around the mansion in the form of sparkling butterflies. That was the story. Come to think of it, didn't Kanan-kun once say he'd seen it with his own eyes? But he got sulky when I said he must have imagined it and refused to believe him. You know, those people who like memorize parts of the Bible or like the entire Bible and like recite it by memory. So I could see if someone really cared, like reciting like a big part of Umineko. I don't imagine anyone ever would. But like, it's impressive that people can do that with any book, honestly. It's some real dedication. Not the kind of dedication I'd ever put into something like that, but it's impressive nonetheless. Kind of the same way I view actual speedrunners. It's not like the kind of thing I don't think I could ever really do, but I admire the like insane dedication that people put in to these like niche things. Could it possibly be true? The roar of the thunder gave no answer. Now, Umineko's strongest fan is this one guy who made like a 20-hour theory video on like a certain culprit theory in Umineko. That later got disproved by the manga. Oops. The manga for Umineko, it's the same story, but it makes a few things more clear. I think it was 20 hours. It was something like that. God, it was long. It's been re-uploaded now. But you don't want to watch it without seeing the entirety of Umineko first. You don't even know the characters. I thought it was a really solid theory too. But apparently the manga, which I haven't claimed to have read myself, makes a couple points of potential contention and confusion in the visual novel much more clear and stated factually than they initially were. Take a look up there at my wall. You can barely see her there in the back, but there she is. I have her too. I have the portrait. I have to be careful with my camera angle because I have two more Umineko portraits that are a bit more spoilery. One of which you'll just see and you'll be like, who the heck is that? But the other one you'll see and you'll be like, why is that character wearing that outfit? That's strange. So I try to hide those. Look at all these characters doing their own things tonight. Time passes. Achievement to totally ruin the moment. Thanks. Thanks, Steam. Boop, boop. Jeez, I don't remember that jingle. So we go from midnight back to 6 a.m. So we're on day 2 now. Let me refill my water real quick. Oh. Making sure nothing happens here. 1986, day 2. Also still there in Japanese. I guess they just kept that in, just for fun. Yeah, let me get water, 1 second. I have my faucet dripping out in the kitchen for some of the cats, and I go out there and I pet one of the cats on the counter, and the top of her head is like soaking wet. She's been sitting under the faucet, I guess. Genji tightened his bow tie and looked outside through a crack in the curtains. Maybe the rain had died down a tiny bit since the previous night, but the thick rain clouds didn't seem like they'd be letting any trace of the morning sun goodbye. The morning was dim and far from refreshing. I ain't saved it all. It's not like this is a crash-prone game, but just out of habit, I should. It seems it'll last all day after all. Sorry for keeping you waiting, Genji-sama. Kana finished checking his appearance and exited the washroom. On their normal schedule, it was rare for anyone to have to suffer going straight from a midnight shift to an early morning shift. They were on a special schedule for the 2 days of the family conference. However, unless the typhoon passed today, the relatives' stay on this island would last until tomorrow. So they were initially going to go home today, I believe. Kana thought it best to be prepared for the special schedule to last an extra day. The two of them left the guest house, opening their umbrellas. The rose garden had been devastated by the wind and rain on the previous night. Even though they'd spent several days making it beautiful to welcome the guests, one stormy night was enough to ruin it. Kana sighed. The two headed for the mansion. They were supposed to meet up with Goda and prepare breakfast. Goda was such a perfectionist that he had probably already woken up and was probably already preparing a breakfast as exquisite and elegant as glasswork. They reached the overhang by the entrance to the mansion and pulled out up their umbrellas. Genji took a bundle of several keys from his pocket and unlocked the front door. The Yoshida family mansion was the only thing on Aokijima, so in the past they had been in the habit of locking up. However, Natsu had ordered that the mansion be locked up from midnight to early morning. Ever since then, unlocking the door in the early morning had become part of the servants' morning shift. This task had been given to Genji and Kanon. It's funny, the Genji here is also like really old. It's one of the oldest people. I wonder if Genji's just like considered an old person name. This task had been given to Genji and Kana so that Goda could start preparing breakfast as soon as he woke up. Silence had fallen in the mansion, giving the impression that the mansion itself was still asleep. Well then, let us begin the morning chores. Yes, sir. The two of them split up and began opening the curtains throughout the mansion. If the curtains stayed closed, the mansion would remain enveloped in faint darkness, as though it were still trapped in the previous night. Following a well-rehearsed procedure, Kana went around the mansion, opening the curtains for one window after another without having to retrace his steps once. Even with this horrible weather, joining the curtains made it feel just a little bit like morning. Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. I guess Genji's not like... I think he's just a turtle, not a turtle yokai. I don't know why he can talk. You never really think about that, honestly. That's something I've never seen explored, like the idea that maybe Genji can turn into a human. I've never actually heard that idea. That's interesting. Even with the species like that start out as regular animals, like Nekomata, Kitsune, typically those like start off as animals, live for a long time or whatnot, and then turn into yokai. You'd assume maybe it'd be the same for Genji, just being a regular turtle, and then eventually he gets to fly and talk. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Something for a fan game someday. While doing that, he passed in front of the kitchen. Even though he hadn't smelled anything yet, his stomach started aching for some of Goda's prized cooking. Good morning. He tried to greet Goda, who should have been getting breakfast ready, but Goda was nowhere to be seen. Look what the rain ambience is doing to me. The kitchen was darkly lit. Not only were the curtains not open, but the fan wasn't even running. It was still cold without any trace of a fire being lit, so of course there were no signs of breakfast being made either. Though it would have been inexcusable, perhaps God had overslept. Even servants are only human. They sometimes sleep in and show up late. In the rare case that such a thing happens, it's part of a servant's code to hide the unsightly scene before anyone notices, smoothly cover it up, and make sure the family never even realizes that anything's gone wrong. Kana took the receiver of the phone that had been fitted to the wall and dialed the number for the extension line in the servant's sleeping room. He couldn't hear that characteristic sound of a dial tone. Kana tried picking up the receiver again. Even so, he couldn't hear the usual dial tone. He tried dialing again, but it had no apparent effect. Could the lightning last night have damaged the machine, breaking the extension line? The equipment in his mansion was all worn out. Ken had fully understood that even the smallest thing could have caused it to break down. He gave up trying to wake Goto with the phone and dashed over to the servant's sleeping room. Gotta get something done, do it yourself. How long has it been since I stopped sleeping and started lazily staring up at the ceiling? Can't browse Twitter on your phone if it's the 1980s. That vague sense of awakening was part of Natsu's usual morning experience. She always slept lightly, and she couldn't sleep at all without medicine. For Natsuhi, sleep was definitely not a happy thing. That's a real shame. Sleep is so nice. When she looked outside, she saw that it was still pouring. Oh my god. Umineko, what are you doing to me? If she hadn't sensed a tiny amount of light, she might have mistakenly thought that it was still the previous night. She herself was one of the hosts, so she must not wake up later than her guests. Urging herself on, she raised up her body, which still hadn't completely recovered from yesterday's weariness. No one would torment her as long as she remained inside this room, and her headache wouldn't get any worse here. This room was the only place she could find peace. So when she left, it meant returning to the world where her husband's siblings kept trying to stab each other in the back. In that case, wouldn't it be better to just stay locked up in this room forever? That ridiculous notion brought a bitter smile to Natsuhi's face. She was starting to sound like Kinzo. Though she often complained about Kinzo staying locked up in his own room and refusing to attend to everyone else, the truth was that she longed to do the same. Natsuhi gave her head a small shake, and her fantasy was replaced by the reawakening of her usual headache. Because you shake your head so much. Don't shake the cranium. When she reached for the doorknob, trying to leave the room, her hand touched the scorpion charm that she had hung from it before going to sleep the previous night. It was Maria's charm, which Natsuhi had received from Jessica. Didn't Jessica say something about it having the power to repel magic, telling her to hang it from her doorknob? Maybe it was thanks to the charm that at least this room had been protecting from the malice of her husband's siblings. As she thought this, her mood began to get a little more cheerful. I wonder if I have Jessica to thank for the little bit of peaceful sleep I managed to receive. Then Natsuhi remembered. That's right. Last night, I promised Jessica that I'd give her a charm of my own in exchange for this one, didn't I? Natsuhi opened the drawer on her dresser and took out an antique accessory case that she had treasured when she was a child. Inside, there were many small objects that Natsuhi thought were valuable at the time. From amid its toes, she pulled out a red pouch. Inside was a small round mirror about 10 centimeters across. It looked quite old, but the design on the back of the mirror was quite ornate, very ornate, and it felt like something with historical value. At the very least, it seemed more authentic than the other charm, which looked like a plastic scorpion keychain. She had heard that this was a spiritual mirror for warding off evil spirits, and that she'd been given it specifically by her grandmother when her grandfather's mementos had been distributed. Why are my eyes trying to read grandfather and grandmother as Ganondorf? What's wrong with me? It had been believed since a long time ago that a strange power resided in this mirror. Perhaps people thought it could reflect calamity and malice in the same way it reflected light. Natsuhi returned the mirror to its pouch. It would probably be a fitting object to hand over to Jessica. Just as she was placing it in her pocket, the sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly echoed throughout the room. Yes? Good morning, madam. It is Genji. My apologies for waking you so early. I'm coming now. What is it? No servant had ever come to her this early in the morning, nor had they come to wake her in person. Perhaps something bad had happened. Maybe some fatal oversight had been made while preparing breakfast, something that would shame the household in front of the guests. Natsuhi took a deep breath in anticipation for whatever trouble she was about to hear of. When she opened the door, Genji once again gave a morning greeting while bowing deeply. Natsuhi tentatively responded. Good morning. Did something happen? My apologies. It would seem that the telephones had broken down due to the lightning last night. The extension telephone isn't working, so please forgive my coming to see you directly. The extension telephone isn't working? That will be troublesome. Will it be possible to fix it? I'm afraid we don't know the location of the damage. Later on, I would like to call in an expert and have him repair it. Does that mean we'll be unable to have it repaired until after the typhoon passes? Then it will remain broken down for the duration of our guest's stay. Will that hamper our efforts to care for our guests? We will do all we can to ensure there are no problems. Very well. I'm counting on you to make sure we have no blunders. Natsuhi let out a small sigh of relief. I feel like, considering they're all family, you don't really need to worry so much about, like, shaming your household in front of others. Obviously, I don't have this kind of family dynamic, but it's just so foreign to me. I really think they ought to just suck it up and love each other a bit more. I guess that's hard with the money in the equation, huh? She'd been prepared for the worst, but damage to the telephones wasn't the kind of trouble she was worried about. Then again, even this would probably be enough to spark sarcasm from Ava. Natsuki gave her head a light shake. Are the preparations for breakfast proceeding well? As to that, we haven't been able to find Goda. The arrangements for breakfast have yet to be carried out. What did you say? Natsuki was indignant. To her, this was a much bigger problem than the phones not working. And despite that, this piece of information was the part that had been postponed. Why did everything go well most of the time, and then come to something like this when the relatives were visiting? Natsuki put her hand to her forehead, not head to her forehead, and shook her head. Well, I suppose he slept in. At any rate, just see to it that someone hurries up and prepares breakfast. I don't care who. What? Natsuki exited into the hall and turned around for a second to close the door to her room. The creepy thing she saw there silenced her completely. It was an unpleasant sight, as though someone had dipped their fingers in a reddish-black liquid and scratched at the door on the doorknob. It was probably some sort of awful prank, arranged by some person who wanted to make it seem and make it look as though they tried to force the door with bloody hands. What sort of prank is this? How awful. I also just noticed it as I came to call you. I will clean it later. But perhaps this is a vulgar joke by one of the guests. Disgusting, truly disgusting. Who in the world would pull such a childish and disgusting prank? Nancy had a pretty good idea, but of course there was no proof. So even if she pushed the issue, it would just seem as though she was making a fuss about nothing. In fact, it would surely be better to act as though she hadn't even realized that such a prank had been played on her. Natsuki gave the order to have it cleaned and headed off to the parlor with a squeak of her heels. She probably suspects Ava. When Natsuki and Genji arrived in the parlor, Ava and Hideyoshi were already there. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Natsuki-san. I heard Goda-san would be making us breakfast too. My stomach's been getting all excited since I woke up. Wahahaha. After all, it seems food is all you can look forward to at the head family household. I'm pleased to see that you two... Oh, that you too are in high spirits so early in the morning, Ava-san. With a weary expression, Natsuki returned Ava's gaze, which was fiercely competitive despite the early hour. Then Kanan jogged in. After bowing an apology to the relatives for running inside the mansion, he noticed Genji and told him something in a small voice. Kanan, have you still not found Goda? My apologies, madam. I went all over the inside of the mansion and the guest house, but I still haven't found him. Where in the world has he gone? At any rate, breakfast is a higher priority than finding Goda right now. See to it immediately. Yes. Kanan glanced at Genji. It seemed he had something else to report, but was uncertain whether or not the word should come from him. Genji nodded and decided to give the report himself. Madam, it is not only Goda. Your husband is also nowhere to be found. My husband? Yes. Even before visiting you, I went to his room to tell him that breakfast wasn't being prepared, but I did not find him there. Furthermore, he is not the only one missing. Rudolph-sama, his wife, and Rosa-sama are nowhere to be found. Not in the guest house? Nor the mansion? Yes. They were not in their rooms in the guest house either. When she'd heard that Goda alone was missing, she'd assumed he had slept in or was loafing around somewhere. However, now that she'd learned that several of the relatives were also nowhere to be seen, she began to take a slightly more optimistic view. Last night's family conference had continued all night, up until the present moment. If so, they might have wanted to cool their heads after being shut in a stuffy room, going out for walks on their own through the rain. The part about cooling their heads really sounded like something Kraus would say. Goda had probably been summoned to accompany them and aid them in some way. Goda was not a man who lost track of time. He had to understand that preparations for breakfast would be hindered if he did not return. However, maybe the family conference had continued until this very moment, with an atmosphere that would make it hard for anyone to slip out. Yes, that theory would surely be quite convincing for Natsuki. She remembered the illusion she felt that morning, as though the previous night had never ended. When she learned that the feeling wasn't just an illusion, she once again took a deep, weary breath. After all, that banquet of filthy vultures circling Kinza's property was still going on. Perhaps they're still discussing the inheritance somewhere in the garden, or maybe the beach. At any rate, if we don't call Goda back, we'll never be able to begin preparations for breakfast. So what are you saying? Are Nissan and the rest still continuing their discussion? She'd planned to say it in a small voice, but Hideyoshi overheard Natsuki and managed to grasp the situation. Nissan and Rudolph sure are tough. Maybe it's just youth in Rose's case. Just a bit after midnight, the two of us were so tired that we headed back to bed. Though I do remember that Nissan and the rest were still having heated discussion at that point. Men certainly are unpleasant when they get all fired up. Nancy snorted, her face still blank. Kanan, search outside. If you find Goda, tell him to return immediately and begin preparing breakfast. Certainly. Natsu Ine-san, we don't know for sure that they're outside, do we? Couldn't they also be inside Father's study? I see, that's certainly possible. I don't know what path the conversation took, but there's certainly a chance they moved to Father's study and let him in on the discussion. I can't imagine that Father would willingly let them bring such a detestable topic into his study. You really think so? Well then, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, Genji-san and Kan-kun, but could you search outside? It wouldn't be that strange for Nissan to suggest that they go outside for a walk to cool their heads. Even in this weather. I'll go to Father's study. Who knows, they might actually be there after all. Eva-san, I couldn't ask a guest like you to exert herself, so I will go. I can also wish him a good morning while I'm at it. Oh, then I'll leave it in your hands. Though I somehow doubt I will return your greeting. Natsune-san, have you always been on such good terms with Father? Just to remind anyone unfamiliar, out of the family, the only ones that live here on the mansion with Kinzo are Kraus, Natsuki, and Jessica. The others all live in other places, not on the island, and they come here for the conference every year. It's a battler who hasn't been here in like 6 years. Alright, I keep forgetting that, like, I don't have the mouse displaying, but yeah. These guys here show up. As in, sorry, these four here live on the mansion. Live on the island, in the mansion. Yep. I don't know what you would call it that, but I'm sure that I have gained his trust as the wife of the successor to the Yoshimura family. And I'm sure he'll at least answer you, right? I'd like to at least have breakfast with Father. Do you think you could convince him to come down and join us? It seems that he thoroughly despises the rest of us, but I'm sure he'll listen to you if he trusts you that much. After speaking so boldly, if you're unwilling to convince Father and come down alone, then I doubt you'll ever be able to claim that you've earned his trust again. Yeah, the anatomy's not great. There's a reason most of the characters don't have their hands visible, unless you go look at the portraits here. It's worse in Higurashi, and there is updated portraits I could use, and I'll show them off real quick, but during my initial read-through of the VN, used the original graphics, because that's all there was back then. And so they're nostalgic and beloved to me, so I'm using them here. But if you want some more, like, intricate designs for the characters, and, like, a really hideous face on Eva, then that is something that you can have. There's, like, mods that you can get that add in other portraits and stuff, too, as well as add in the voice acting from the PS3 release. But I'm not running those. And there you go. I don't think we've seen Kumasawa all day. I think she's the only character we haven't seen today. Actually, I guess we haven't seen Nanjo either. There's definitely some height differences here too, honestly. I'm not confident, but I will try. Natsu responded, looking discouraged. However, knowing Kinzo's temperament, she had absolutely no confidence in her ability to bring him out. Ava was clearly mocking her, confident that Natsu wouldn't be able to get Kinzo to come down. But even so, Natsu would lose face if she gave up, saying it was impossible and letting Ava go instead. Ava's mean-spirited and unreasonable demand made Natsu clench her fists slightly. When Genji realized this, he softly spoke to her over her shoulder. Madam, please take this, if you would. And this is? Genji handed Natsu a sparkling gold key of ornate design. It was the key to Kinzo's study. The study had an auto-lock and couldn't be unlocked as long as Kinzo forbade entrance. However, since Genji was especially trusted by Kinzo, he was allowed to carry a key to that door. If this key is used, won't you also receive the blame? When the master is sleeping deeply, simply knocking the door will not suffice. And it would be more difficult to persuade the master to leave his room if he must talk through the door. Please use this. Genji. Until now, Natsu had thought of Genji as a cold servant who wouldn't do anything for her, since he worked directly under Kinzo. But it looked like she would have to alter her understanding of him. She wanted to communicate her gratitude, but by then, Genji had already turned his back on her and was walking down the corridor with Kanan. But as Natsu had watched them go, the words directed at her from behind were sneering. Well then, you must bring Father with you, okay? After all, it's his son's precious wife who's asking. I'm sure he'll listen to you. We're guests, so we'll just relax here at our leisure. Quit it, Eva, you're taking this too far. Sorry, Natsu-ne-san, but we're counting on you to deal with Father. Without answering, Natsu forcibly spun around on her heels and quickly left that place. After all that excitement the previous night, there was no way anyone was going to wake up early. George, Aniki, Jessica, and I were snoring loudly in the beds in the cousin room. Maria, who had gone straight to bed without joining in, was completely awake. As she rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked around, she was met with a loud snoring into the other three cousins. For a while, Maria had to think about what had happened. Throwing a chair at blonde Yomi. You're gonna spoil yourself on less stuff if you keep looking up clips. Well, I guess you're not going to understand why things are happening, probably. After that, she realized that her mother wasn't with her, and she quickly got lonely. Also, I don't know why Rika's so strong. Maria left the cousin room. Why does this say cousin room instead of like cousin's room or something? This feels so weird saying cousin room. I don't like that. Feels like a mistake, even though I don't think it really is. Trying to head to the room that had been arranged for her and her mother. Paying no heed to the three who were sleeping soundly, she slammed the door shut. In response, Battler mumbled and rolled over in his sleep, but it wasn't enough to wake him up. After a while, Maria returned, once again opening the door with a lively bang. Ooh. When she had left the room, her face had been sleepy, but now that she was back, she looked irritated. After that, she climbed up on Battler's bed, which happened to be the closest, and started yelling and jumping on it like it was a trampoline. Ooh. Wake up. Ooh. What? Is it an enemy raid? Surround them. After making sure I was awake, Mari moved over to George Oniki's bed and started jumping on that too. In that manner, the three of us were all greeted with an extremely pleasant awakening. Thanks for waking us up, Maria-chan. You stopped us from sleeping in after that late night. If only you could have been a bit more gentle about it. George Nisan, you really are an adult. I respect that. It'll be 7 soon. Well, it's not really a bad time to wake up. Ugh. Me too, Battler, me too. Ooh, Mama's not here. Ooh. Aunt Rosa? She wasn't in her room? Wonder if she's already woken up and gone to the mansion. Not here. Ooh, Mama. Ooh. Mama kept groaning. Maria kept groaning ooh and looking unhappy. She didn't exactly seem lonely because her mother wasn't around. It was more like she was irritated and thrown off balance because her mother wasn't where she expected. If we could just tell her where her mother was, that alone would probably calm her down. But unfortunately, we had no way of knowing where Aunt Rosa was, except that she wasn't here. Anyway, it's time for breakfast, so let's head over to the mansion. That's right. Mario, let's go to the mansion together, okay? If you think Mario's actually more like Flan. I'm sure Aunt Rosa will be there too. Ooh, Mama's in the mansion? Then I'll go there. Ooh. Yeah, I guess we should go to the mansion. Our parents are probably already gone there. Mario regained her usual composure so completely. Her earlier tantrum now seemed like a lie. We got dressed, left the room, and headed for the mansion. Hey. Once more, there was a knocking sound on the study door, but there was no answer. He seemed to be sleeping still, and I could not wake him. If she went back downstairs and said something like that, Eva would probably be amused and triumphant. And even putting Eva aside, it was problematic that Kinzo had stayed shut away during this entire once-a-year conference, not even coming down to greet anyone. Even the family head, no, especially the family head, couldn't fail to make an appearance. I wonder if I can convince him myself. Natsu readied herself and used the key that she'd borrowed from Genji to open the door. But the anime sub or dub, for Igarashi, I've only ever seen it subbed. For Umineko, is there even a dub? I don't know. I always watch subs personally, and I think that the voice acting is really good, especially Beatrice. Beatrice is really good. Yeah, like one thing I would say about the Umineko anime is that it has good voice acting. I actually don't know if it's the same VAs that like voiced the PS3 visual novel port. I wonder. If not, they would sound a bit weird to me. But later on, I might even like bring up some clips of the anime to show off that kind of thing. Like when we get to certain points, you know, that might not be a bad idea for like certain scenes. Like after we get through specific scenes, like I could bring them up from the anime and show them too, even though they're like 20 times shorter in the anime. There's a couple scenes in particular. This is gonna sound weird considering what this is, but there are fight scenes in this. There are going to be like full-on shonen fight scenes later on. And the downside of the VN is, you know, it's you just have them read to you. You don't get to see them, and it's kind of cool seeing them actually animated in the anime. I really liked that part of it. And because it seems like Umineko's never going to get a continuation to its anime, we'll never see this stuff in the second half. Get animated like that. Yeah, the hands they're off-putting in Higurashi. Like, it's kind of like Zun's art, you know? Umineko's art eventually got endearing to me, and I, came to like it. But with Higurashi, I have a much harder time doing that. Maybe it's just because I don't really care as much about the story of Higurashi, and I'm sure that's part of it. But it's also that, as maybe not perfect as Umineko's art is, it's a significant step up, in my opinion. Even the hands are a big step up. They're half the size. Everyone has, Mickey Mouse feet for hands, basically. You know, Zona, the author of this, have actually met and drank before. When she did, Kinzo was already awake and looking down out of the window. So you're awake. Good morning. How did you get in? Kinzo spoke with his back still facing her. His voice was not harsh, but calm, and Natsuki was slightly reassured. However, though he was awake, he wouldn't have ignored all that knocking if he was in a good mood. Natsuki wasn't able to relax. My sincere apologies. I asked Genji-san, and he allowed me to borrow the key to the study. Oh, Genji did? If my friend thought it was that important, then I have no choice but to listen. So, what business do you have with me? Well, breakfast will be ready soon, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would join us. I will eat here. Have it brought here like always. But father, this family conference happens only once a year. Please, at least let them see your face. Go back downstairs. Are you asking me to join in as they discuss how to chew up my inheritance after I die? How foolish. Let them speak of such matters as much as they please without me. And if that's what you call a family conference, it's hardly worth leaving my room for it. I'm busy. Do not bother me. His last words carried the threat that any further questions would not be appreciated. Natsuki realized that adding any further pleas would finally bring his wrath down upon her. She didn't look forward to facing any of his sarcasm, but there was nothing more Natsuki could do. Is that so? Understood. I'm sure everyone will be sorry to hear it, but I will tell them. Natsuki decided to give up. Bowing silently, she tried to leave the room before Kinzo's spasmodic temper could flare up. As she did, Kinzo spoke to her. His voice was so calm and gentle, it felt like it came from an entirely different person. Natsuki, it has been quite some time since you married into the Ushimura family. Yes, it has been many years since I was first permitted to bear the name Ushimura. Do you sometimes long for your previous family? No. Marriage means abandoning your birth family. I am Ushimura. Ushimiya. Yeah. I have issues with R's. I am Ushimura Natsuki. The Ushimura family is the only family I can come home to, the only one I'm fond of. She truly wasn't exaggerating. Such was the resolve she felt whenever she applied the Ushimura family name to herself. That's precisely why she was so saddened when her husband didn't treat her like an Ushimura, leaving her to race about in vain. If Kraus were a woman, and you his husband... No, I won't say that. What do you mean by that, father? Natsuki was shocked. If Genzo's words just now were what they seemed, it would have been more than enough to make up for all she'd suffered up to that point. Forget it. It's just the nonsense of an old man. Kinzo once again faced away from her. He told her to forget it, but Natsuki couldn't help feeling a warmth in her heart. Father, even though I, Natsuki, am not connected to you by blood, I am still your daughter. I'll most assuredly see to it that your honor and glory and everything you have left behind are protected. What a touching moment. You do not have the right to wear the one-winged eagle. However, the one-winged eagle is surely engraved in your heart. That is irrefutable proof that you are my blood relative, one who will inherit the glory of the Ushimura family. Some will sneer that there is no eagle in your clothes. Such words are not worth lending an ear to. Only those who hold the eagle in their hearts are my true blood relatives. Now consider it an honor that you are welcomed into the Ushimura family. Without saying anything more, Kinzo remained with his back to Natsuki. However, Natsuki couldn't help but feel something warm well up inside her that she hadn't felt since long ago, when she had been just a child. Natsuki bowed silently to his back and left the room. Ah, good timing. How was father? He would take me so long, so I came to check. When Natsuki left the study, she saw Eva climbing the stairs, and their eyes met. Eva was smirking unpleasantly, thinking that Natsuki would leave grudgingly after failing to convince Kinzo. However, the way Natsuki was now, such a frivolous laugh would not disturb her. She was not permitted to wear the family crest on her clothing, but she was permitted to wear it in her heart. So she spoke calmly, clearly, and confidently, with the dignity of the one who would protect the Ushimita family's glory. Father said he would not join in on the family conference. He says he has no interest in discussing such obscene matters. I figured he'd say something like that. If he failed to persuade Father, just say so. How pitiful. I'm beginning to see why Father lamented so. But what do you mean by that? Natsuki did not answer. Just as Kinzo had done earlier, she showed Eva her back as she headed down the stairs. Eva finally realized that she was being made fun of. That's something that had happened to quickly bolster Natsuki's confidence. Even so, she apparently didn't have the courage to risk Kinzo's wrath. Unable to even knock on the door, she could only click her tongue, make a motion as though scratching at it, and follow after Natsuki. Yeah, she grew up with him after all, so she's had to deal with Kinzo a lot more. So were Nissan and the rest there? Did you ask Father about them? I didn't get the chance to ask, but they were not inside the study. Father would never let them into his room to discuss such a lowly topic, so it is unlikely he knows where they went. Let us go downstairs and wait for the servants to return from their search. Breakfast may be late, but how would you like some tea, Eva-san? That would be fine. Eva couldn't hide her confusion at the complete difference in Natsuki's attitude. She was acting so boldly, and while Eva hated to admit it, she even had a sense of dignity about her. Unable to find fault with anything, Eva could only follow Natsuki back to the parlor. Oh, revisiting these scenes with context feels very different. I need water in the bathroom. Be right back. This little goober still has slightly wet head. Is there a tier list comparison for Umineko character strength? There might be, because that kind of thing kind of comes up later. Certain characters beating out others. Like I said, they're going to be shown in battles later on. Umineko is a lot of different genres all in one. But it's just incredible what it does, really. When the two of them returned to the par, Hideyoshi had been joined by the 4 children and Nanjo. Genji, who had been talking with Hideyoshi, reported the current situation when he noticed that Natsuki had returned. You still have not found my husband and the rest? Yes, my apologies. Also, Kumasawa has started preparing breakfast. She said that she'll need just a little longer. The clock read a little past 8. 8 should have been the time to start breakfast. Normally, going over that time limit would be a disgrace to the host. Kanan is now searching outside. Also, no one has seen Shannon either. Even Shannon's missing? Truly, just how many people did my husband bring with him on his little walk? Just how many people had gone missing by now? Now that the number was this large, it was starting to feel truly unpleasant, as though the people here were the only ones being left out of something interesting. At least that seemed to reflect the feelings of the children, and Maria in particular. She was indignant, her stomach grumbling, almost as though her mother and the others had left her alone to go off and eat something delicious without her. The other children were flipping through the channels on the television, trying to find a program that might interest Maria and cheer her up again. Nanja was sitting on the sofa, gazing blissfully at the children while reading a book. It must have been a book about chess. The sound of footsteps came rushing toward them with a pitter-patter. There was only one set, so they realized before seeing who it belonged to that it was probably Kanan, not Kraus and the rest. Madam, excuse me. Judging by your appearance, you still haven't been able to find them. My apologies. I still haven't. That will be enough. You worked hard. She didn't know where they were, but they had to be somewhere on this island. She hadn't had a thing to eat since the previous night, so their stomachs must be growling about now. They'd probably come plodding back over their own accord before long. By now, Natsu was thoroughly exasperated and started to feel that there was no reason for them to go out of their way in search. I will go to the kitchen to prepare some tea for all the guests. Thanks to both of you for all your hard work so early in the morning. Natsu left the parlor, acting as though the release in tension had caused a new surge in her headache. Kana tried to call to her back, but Natsu left swiftly. What is it? Was there something else? Yes. I was unable to find her husband or anyone else, but, well... Kana sounded evasive. It looked as though he didn't know where they were, but had spotted something that might be connected to their disappearance. Happening. Eva and Hideyoshi noticed this exchange of words and came over. They'd probably picked up on something strange in Kanan's behavior. What's going on, Kanan-kun? Did you find Kraus, Nissan, and everyone else? Actually, the Rose Garden storehouse looked strange. What do you mean, it looked strange? It was, how should I explain it? Kanan hesitated once more. His tone wasn't at all what you'd expect from this usually fearless boy. Seeing this, Eva and Hideyoshi looked at each other dubiously. What do you mean? Are you saying Nissan and the others were inside the storehouse? No, I'm going to inspect the inside now. I just came back to get the key, but, I don't really get it. It sounds like we've just got to look around inside it. Where's the key to that storehouse? It is inside the servant room. Let us check inside the storehouse at once. Kana dashed off to the servant room and returned with the key. Genji left the parlor, saying that he would go check, but then Ebe and Hideyoshi followed after him. What was this something strange about the storehouse that had caused the usually fearless Kanan to hesitate? It was still pouring outside, but perhaps their curiosity over this something that Kanan couldn't talk about won out. Well, the children made a big fuss watching television. Kanan and the rest dashed over to the entrance. Stock up on water now. The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that housed various tools used to manage the garden. It was definitely not a pretty building. Because of its appearance, it had been built so that it was hidden in a corner of the Rose Garden. Kanan, Genji, Eva, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was normally off limits for those appreciating the garden and only used by those maintaining it. As they dashed down that, the storehouse came into view in front of them. How long is the game if you were to button mash? It's a good question. I mean, I think you can hold control and like super speed through the dialogue, so... No. All 8 VNs every couple hours or less, because it has to occasionally stop and pause. Probably 2-3 hours. I don't know. But I don't think people would be very respectful of a button mash speedrun of Umineko. It was quite an old shed, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the Rose Garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in such a hard-to-see place. Eva and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Kanan and Genji. You two sure are fast. Thought my heart was gonna explode. I never knew they had a storehouse way over here. But, what is that? Hair in my nose? When Ava looked where Kanan was pointing, she was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Hideyoshi also felt Kanan's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was a kind of shutter. There, everyone suddenly realized, oh, hey real, why Kanan had been unable to find words to describe what they now saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from its being exposed to wind and rain for so long, stuck right on it, there was something that looked like a strange dark red liquid? Mucus? Maybe it was some sticky paint. An indescribably eerie shape was drawn on the shutter with some kind of ghastly substance. So I wonder, like, if they have, like, new versions of, like, CG and stuff, or if it's just, like, the portraits. There actually wasn't, like, much CG in the original. I don't know what's in here. I think there's, like, mods that add, like, CG in from the PS3 version or whatever. I don't think it's going to be in here, probably. I'm not sure. The raid had caused it to drip down like fresh blood leaking from an open wound. No more beating around the bush. Some kind of mark was drawn there, with a ghastly substance that looked like blood, a shape that seemed to suggest something ominous. 2 circles were drawn there, and inside them was a design that looked like a cross. The 4 ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between these shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters, or possibly symbols. A vulgar bit of graffiti. Could this be one of those? One of those magic circles used in demonic ceremonies? It wasn't surprising that Hideyoshi would say that about such a ghastly shape drawn with a deep red dripping substance. When was this made? There was nothing drawn here when I came by yesterday before it started raining. We must do something before anyone else sees this. If they laid eyes upon it, it would cause them great discomfort. That's right. Even though it's just a shed, I wouldn't want to leave such an unpleasant piece of graffiti alone for even a second longer than I had to. There's some paint inside the storehouse. I'll just paint over it temporarily as an emergency measure, and repaint it again someday when the weather's good. Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another scribble, and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance of the same color as this. That must have been... That's right. He had seen it on the door to Natsu's room. Kanan-kun, let's remove this scribble quickly and go back, okay? Even though it's just a storehouse, it's really irritating to have graffiti around the home I was brought up in. Yes, ma'am. I'll take care of it immediately. Kanan squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. He then lifted it up with all his strength. A boisterous noise resounded, and the eerie shape drawn on the shutter began to get sucked in through the top as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, the ominous drawing disappeared from the direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to a kids program they came across, Mori was feeling much better. Battler and Jessica were poking fun at the kids show at every turn, cackling together. George was enjoying the program with Mori from her perspective. Nanjo sat on a sofa by himself, passing the time by reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were the footsteps of a single person. Did that mean it wasn't the group of 4 that had just left? It was Genji. It was very rare for Genji, who considered being out of breath a violation of a servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He'd probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet, and he didn't have his usual trim appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small silent bow and quickly approached him. Dr. Nanjo, my apologies. Please, come with me, quickly. What is the matter? As Genji whispered something in Nanjo's ear, Nanjo went pale. He rose from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children who were still engrossed by the TV, and the 2 of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were about to enter the parlor, they came across Natsuhi, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Genji whispered something in Natsuhi's ear, and Natsuhi went pale too in apparent shock. Then, leaving the serving cart where it was, the 3 of them dashed toward the entrance. George noticed them running down the rose garden through the window. What's that? Isn't that Genji's son and Dr. Nanjo, and that's Aunt Natsuhi, isn't it? What's up, Aniki? Maybe something happened. They looked terribly flustered. When Jessica and Moria saw that Eva, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo were no longer in the seats and that the serving cart had been abandoned at the entrance to the parlor, they also realized that something was the matter. Could there have been some kind of accident? Let's go check it out. It's no fun if we're the only ones left out, right? Hehehe. For some reason, what Battler said sounded extremely indiscreet, but they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned after seeing the adults run off into the rain without regards to their appearance. Let's check it out, okay? I'm worried something might have happened. Jessica's uneasy words spoke for all of them. Hey Mario, are you coming too? Or you will watch TV? Ooh, wanna watch TV. Ooh, SpongeBob. Let's go on without her. Mario-chan, we'll be back soon. You keep watching TV, okay? Ooh, Hello Kitty. By the time the kids made it outside, the adults were no longer in sight. But Jessica seemed to have a pretty good idea where they'd gone, judging by the direction they'd been running. Following Jessica, we ran through the rain-soaked rose garden. The wind seemed to suddenly get stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to rumble like it had the previous night. It felt like an eerie something had surrounded the island, and was trying to stop us from moving forward. Jessica, is there something over this way? I'm pretty sure there's a shed for gardening tools or something. What in the world could be going on in a place like that? Just as Jessica had said, they began to see a storehouse in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter to the storehouse was open, and several adults looked as though they were searching for something. Is it possible to have that hairstyle? Sure, with enough gel. You could probably do it. For some reason, only Natsui was outside the storehouse. Without even holding an umbrella, she looked like she was hanging her head, and her back was facing them. It was Genji, Nanjo, and Natsuhi, who just left the mansion. The ones who left earlier, Kan, Eva, and Hideyoshi, were also there, making for a small crowd of people. But there was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized that the children were approaching, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them with her arms spread wide. You mustn't come any closer. Go back to the mansion. But despite that, no, because of that, the kids saw the scene Natsuhi was trying to keep them away from. Inside the storehouse with its shutter wide open, a faint fluorescent light shone down. Right there was... Scream. Jessica's piercing shriek ran out. But that was just because Jessica's scream was the loudest. The same thing spilled out about where George's mouth as well. Ava spread her arms just like Natsuhi, roaring at the kids with a bone-chilling expression on her face. George, take everyone and return to the mansion. Quickly. Right now. When Natsuhi spread her arms, I thought she was trying to prevent us from advancing any further. But that wasn't why Ava was spreading her arms right now. She was trying to stop us kids from seeing that terrible scene. It was her mother's heart trying to protect the eyes and hearts of us children by blocking our view of that terrible scene by at least the width of one of her arms. Is this some kind of joke? Is it? I'd seen this kind of cheap scene all too often. In manga, TV, anime, and movies, I'd seen it over and over again. This was just seeing something appear in real life that I'd seen plenty of times before. In some of those more sensational movies, right? That alone shouldn't. But that suit, it's that old bastard, isn't it? I get it, and that's Uncle Kraus. I'm curious, son. Aunt Rosa. Yeah. Dad. You mustn't, Jessica. You mustn't go in. You mustn't look. Dad. Rigor mortis has set in across almost the entire body. Most likely, 6 hours or more have passed since death. As far as I can tell by looking at the damaged area, there's a high probability that they were damaged after their deaths. No, I must watch what I say. I'm a general practitioner. Examining corpses is outside my area of expertise. So what's going on here? Just killing them wasn't enough? So they went on to do something like this? The devil. This here's the work of the devil. Aunt Natsuhi caught Jessica in her arms, and Aunt Ava caught George Aniki, so I was the only one who could approach the entrance to the storehouse. If only there had been someone there to catch me too. I wouldn't have needed to have this horrible, evil scene burned into my eyes. No, that's not it. It isn't that there's no one here to catch me. The people who should catch me, they're right there, aren't they? Just as Jessica said, it did look like a storehouse for gardening tools. The body count is about to be 6. Suddenly like 6 people from 0. A lawnmower with extra blades, a grass sickle and a hammer, some carpentry tools such as a saw, piled up potted plants and bags of fertilizer. And treated just the same, the corpses of several people had been laid to rest there. No, had been tossed in there. I could tell them by their clothes. That old bastard and Kirie-san, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Rosa. Beyond that, Goto-san and... Are there still more of them? How many people died? You're fucking kidding me. There's more than I can count on one hand. Damn it. I didn't know whether it had been one of those gardening tools, which if used for something other than their intended purpose, could definitely be wielded with a naked brutality, or whether some horrible tool had been brought in here specifically for this. Again, I'm assuming there's like no CG. Oh hey, it marks them as dead now. I don't think so. Anyway, each one of the bodies jammed in here had been given an atrocious makeup. I believe there should be 6 dead. We just haven't confirmed all the bodies yet. It wasn't makeup. It was more like their faces have been plowed. Their faces were smashed, forced into expressions that normal people couldn't even make after death. They couldn't tell where the eyes or the noses were, but they could find their mouths, because they were gaping wide, their gums exposed. But the front teeth were missing, even the cheeks that should have covered all this were all torn up and laid bare. That trendy makeup you always spent so much time on, even though you're a man, isn't doing a thing now. Yeah, Dad. I always thought you were going to hell. But still, not like this, right? You were such a son of a bitch that you should have had to suffer so brutally. And Kiria-san, didn't I tell you to stop going out with this guy? There's absolutely no reason for you to end up like this, too. They've got no faces. No faces. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Battler-san, you mustn't look anymore. There's no way your mother and father would want you to see them like this. Does this game end with everyone except the protagonist dies? I'm not gonna say how the first episode ends. It's better that you just see. Dead people are supposed to have faces that look like they're sleeping peacefully, right? They've got no faces. My dad and Kiria-san have no faces. I don't even know what kind of faces they were wearing when they died. What's wrong with me? Do I have to see these smashed monster-like faces every time I remember them? That's just great. I didn't want to remember that old bastard's smug-faced anyway. Just great, just great. But why even Kiria-san's face? Kiria-san wasn't a crook. They're on, like, an isolated island that only their family lives on and owns. There's a typhoon. Pretty sure the phones are out. Like, their local phones between their 2 houses are out, so I don't think they can contact anyone. This is 1987, so there's no cell phones. Why even Kiria-san's face? It wasn't a crook. Also, they just found out like 2 minutes ago. Sure, she took me off a bit now and again, but she was like a cool big sister to me. This is wrong. This is all wrong. At least Uncle Krause has it better, doesn't he? It's not his whole face, just the side. At least he's got half his face left, right? That's still better. That's still better. Jessica filled her ears with the sound of her own screaming, trying to shut up my reckless words. Faceless of 87. Stop it, Battler-kun. Just stop it. Just stop it. Aniki, Aniki. Ah. Disregarding age and appearance, I fell to my knees, clinging to Aniki's waist and sobbing. Is this why I was crying on behalf of everyone there? Representing the feelings of everyone there, I screamed over and over. And finally, after like 10 to 12 hours of reading, we have the first murder. First murders. But they're not quite resolved yet. Father, the ones lying over there are Uncle Krause, Uncle Rudolph, Aunt Kirei, and Aunt Rosa and Goda-san. Just those 5, right? No. There are 6 people. There's one more person over here. The body Hideyoshi was looking down on now. Okay. Go on, get in the window if you're gonna close the curtain. The body Hideyoshi was looking down on now happened to be hidden among the shadows in that mountain range of objects. In a blind spot to George, who stood by the entrance. So George couldn't tell whose body it was. So George cursed himself. He cursed the fact that his worst guesses always turned out to be right. So, the one lying near your feet is Shannon, isn't it? Yes, it's Shannon-chan. George fell completely silent. He shook slightly, his lower lip trembling. Normally, he would have wanted to run to his beloved's body, screaming and crying. However, before rashly rushing forward, he worked to keep his composure and asked his father, "Is Shannon the same as Uncle Krause and the others?" Hideyoshi deeply understood the meaning of those words, so he couldn't give George an immediate answer. Or rather, he felt that silence was the only sincere and loving response he could give George right now. When George asked if Shannon was the same, he meant to ask whether her corpse was in the same condition as the others or not. Since Hideyoshi hadn't denied it, it meant her corpse was in the same brutal state. Can I look at Shannon? No, you can't. Why not? After all, I won't be able to see Shannon's face again, right? So, why won't you let me see what her face looked like in the end? Umineko-style Toho fan games? The only Toho fan game I know of that has, like, actual murder and stuff is Human Spirit Agency, which Real happens to be the translator for. But it's more like an Ace Attorney fan game. It's Ace Attorney Toho. That's probably the closest you'd get. I think it has actual character death. Unlike Shady Trial, where it's immortal characters that die, and they're fine, and they show up in the trial. The last time you met Shana-chan was yesterday, right? Yes. I see. You left her. What kind of face was she showing you? It was a wonderful smile. After he handed her the ring, she hesitated, even though she must have already made up her mind. Then she looked bashful. In a way, because she was embarrassed to let him see her face looking like that. That's the expression that was revived in George's mind. I see. Then I'm sure Shana-chan would want to leave you with that smile in your memory. Hideyoshi looked down upon Shannon's body lying at his feet. Just like the other bodies, it was in such a horrible state that it'd make anyone want to cover their eyes. Her head had been smashed in from the side, and no more than half of her expression remained. If the remaining blood-soaked half of her expression had been wiped clean, that graceful smile of hers had peeked out, but only half of it. Without thinking, Hideyoshi slapped his hands over his eyes. How brutal. If her face was going to be crushed anyway, then if only all of it had been crushed, he might have been able to temporarily distract George from his pain by making the pathetic suggestion that it was someone else wearing Shannon's clothes. But half of her face had been left untouched. It caused the body so much humiliation, while still proving without it beyond any doubt that the body was Shannon's and no one else's. How inhuman, how brutish. And there, trying his best to burn the image of the remaining half of Shannon's expression into his eyes as she lay at Hideyoshi's feet, was Kanen. Kanen was not crying. Tears had risen to his eyes, but they did not drip down. But that didn't mean he wasn't feeling as much sadness as everyone else. Losing Shannon, who had lived with him in the same orphanage, whom he'd loved as a sister, must have been just the same as losing a blood relative. George, I'm sure Shana-chan is saying thank you. She must be glad you didn't end up seeing her in such a pitiable state. I'm sure she's thanking you for holding strong and showing restraint. Poor George. I understand. I understand, Father. I understand. George leaned against the outside wall of the storehouse, crouching down limply. Father, I have a request. What is it? I want you to look for me. Is there a ring on Shannon's finger? A ring? Let me see. Hideyoshi crouched down. As he did, Kanen silently pointed to one of Shannon's hands. Yeah, there is. It's a diamond ring. It's a valuable diamond. Must have been pretty expensive. And which hand? And which finger is it on? The ring finger of her left hand. I see. So Shana-chan was engaged. George, don't tell me you... Ava, that doesn't matter now. A man made a lifelong promise to Shana-chan. A man promised her happiness for life. Who that man was isn't the issue here. Being told that by a man is a woman's dream, isn't it? I don't know when she received this ring. I also don't know who gave it to her. However, even so, Shana-chan took this ring. Then she accepted it, and she put it on her left ring finger. I'm sure the man who gave it to her was also happy. The most of the people there, Hideyoshi was simply disturbed by this extraordinary situation, and was blurting out nonsense. However, someone who knew of George and Shannon's true relationship would understand the full meaning of those words. I see. Thank you, Father. George stood up. The traces of tears still streaked his face, but his expression had returned to its usual calm one. Let's go. Valor-kun, Jessica-chan. If we stay here any longer, we'll get in the way of the adults. You're right. Jessica sniffled once, showing her face to her mother, who had been holding her the whole time, though to know she was okay now. When she faced George again, she once again had on her usual expression, although she still couldn't smile. Valor, hang in there. Valor kept on crouching in front of his parents' bodies. He's got it rough, he's right up there next to them. I'm sorry. Crying like hell calmed me down. You bastard, Dad. I bet you're laughing at me. After all that shit I talked about you, here I am crying like a baby just because you died. Well, so what? I guess I just got the gene that makes you cry when your parents kick the bucket. Well, it might not even be clear, actually, because of the events so far. But, he's the main character. Valor is the main character of Umineko. He'll get more focused moving forward. He like, a lot of the narration does come from his perspective in the first part, but it kind of focuses on everyone a little bit. Valor's face was still bright red from the tears, but he had at least recovered enough to fake a smile, if only a bitter one. Kanen, you mustn't remain here any longer either. Take the children and return to the mansion. Natsu had been standing under the rain this whole time, unable to take a step into the storehouse. Maybe she had her own way of grieving, different from Valor's. Realizing that she had to take on a role of responsibility now that her husband was dead, she gave Kanan those orders. Yes. Madam. Oh no, when I mean Battler is the narrator, I mean we most commonly, when we're not from an objective viewpoint, like from a narrator's view, it's Battler narrating to us. Otherwise, it's just like a faceless narrator that isn't anyone in particular reading stuff to us. Remember this. Shannon rose silently and turned to face me. His face was pure white, almost as though his own heart had died with Shannon, and there was no life in his expression. On an ordinary day, if he had been told to guide the children through the beautiful rose garden, Kanan might have led the way. But now there was no distinction between Kanan and the children. They were now just kids of about the same age, suffering the pain of losing those close to them. After making sure that children were leaving, Natsu started giving orders to Genji. Genji, contact the police immediately. They probably won't be able to come until the typhoon passes, but they should be able to tell us what to do next. Understood. Okay, so I think they can... Yeah. Radio. Okay. Understood. There's an emergency radio, so we'll use that to contact them. When she heard that, Natsu remembered. That's alright. The phones were out today, weren't they? However, they also had a radio, since they couldn't necessarily rely on phones all the time living on an isolated island. There you go. At any rate, they should start by contacting the police and receiving their instructions. Everything else could wait. Dr. Najo, is there anything more you can do here? Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. Understood. Genji, could you at least cover their faces with something? Exposing them like this is humiliating to them as well. Yes, ma'am. Genji picked up several dried towels from inside the storehouse, when Ava stopped him with a shrill voice. Wait a second. Stop. This is the scene of the crime, isn't it? Then we mustn't disturb it. We all panicked and walked in here with our shoes on, but even that will surely get in the way of the police's investigation, right? Are you going to go? Thank you for popping in, music. Have a good night. We're wrapping up pretty soonish anyway. I don't think you'll miss any major plot points, but I wanted to get through the first murder today. Natsu glared at Ava, offended. Objectively speaking, Ava was right. Even so, she glared at Ava as though accusing her of refusing to do those tragic corpses. Refusing to do? Which have been humiliated after death? Oh, here we go. Simple kindness of covering their faces. Okay. Right. Now the sentence makes sense. However, Ava had spoken both calmly and incorrectly. This horrible situation definitely wasn't an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed them. It was a murder case. So they needed to be careful to avoid disturbing the site any further. They had to do what little they could to aid the police, preserving clues that might help catch the detestable culprit. I agree with Ava-san. Until the police come, we should leave everything be. What do you say, madam? You're right. Very well. Close it up. And, just in case, we should put a different lock on it. Different lock? Yes. When we came here, the shutter was locked. That means the culprit used the key to the shutter to lock it. That makes sense. So does that mean the key that opens the shutter will have the culprit's fingerprints on it? I'm sure it'll be worth submitting to the police as evidence, but Kanan-kun usually has it, and used it to unlock the shed just now. It'll probably have Kanan's fingerprints on it. Also, that key was handed to Genji-san just now, and he took it with his bare hands. It doesn't look like it'll be very useful as evidence. That was careless of me. My apologies. Genji-san, are there any other keys to this storehouse? No, only this one. So the culprit walked out of the servant room with that key, and then was nice enough to return the key to where they found it? Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go to all the trouble of returning a key they stole? Now, if you think about it even more deeply, there's some points that are even more bizarre. When a criminal hides a body, they're usually trying to delay the point at which it'll be found, so they can use that time to escape. The Siths weren't necessarily killed here, but it was reasonable to assume that they were killed somewhere on this island, carried to the storehouse, and hidden to delay the discovery of the crime. And yet, the eerie magic circle scribbled on the storehouse shutter had eloquently indicated the location of the hidden corpses. Sure, it didn't explicitly mention the corpses, but 6 people had gone missing. In that situation, someone had made such an obvious piece of graffiti and even returned the key to the shutter. Almost as though they wanted the corpses here to be discovered. Anyway, we can't put all our faith in a lock that the culprit has opened once before. If we want to protect this place from the culprit's hand, I think we should put a new lock on it. I think that is a good plan. I agree. Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock that had been inside a small box. What should I do with the key? I will take it. I'll take responsibility and hand it over to the police. Natsuki took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. Oh, please. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter. And so the corpses were once again sealed behind that shutter, which was still covered with that creepy magic circle. Genji crouched down in front of the shutter to fasten the new padlock. Shutters often have a place in front where you can attach or unlock in addition to the main lock of the shutter. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roar of thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there ominously. With its closed shutter still covered in a blood-like, creepy substance, it swallowed up the bodies of the six. And Natsuki, putting the new lock on wasn't mainly to preserve the scene for the police. She might have felt like she wanted to shut that mouth for all eternity, to prevent that eerie beast from swallowing up any more victims. Come on, let's go everyone. Dr. Najo, thank you very much for your work. Genji, hurry and contact the police. I will do so as soon as we return. The adults left the storehouse. The ghastly magic circle drawn on the shutter kept the six bodies in its throat, looming eerily as the lightning occasionally lit it up. Sorry, I was just giggling at something over on Discord. Not giggling at the contents of what's happening today. I'll be wrapping up, but before then, these get updated. Ushimiro Kraus. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. The direct cause of death is unknown, but it seems the side of his head was smashed after his death. This is the beginning of everything. Ushimiro Rudolph. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after death. He has a right to lament his ill fortune. Ushimiro Kirie. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. She was chosen by the demon's roulette. That's all there is to it. Ushimiro Rosa. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. Her face seems to have been smashed after her death. I'll get to see her again, so I don't feel lonely. Servant Shannon. Her corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. It seems the site of her death was smashed after her death. Don't worry. Everyone will be revived in the Golden Land. Servant Goda. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have been smashed after his death. Unfortunate. Apparently, he was originally supposed to be on duty in the guest house. All we have in here that's gotten added is the witch's letter. Okay. That seems like a good stopping point. Things have calmed down after that just slightly. And surely next time there's going to be some discourse about what just happened among the characters, which is really where Umineko shines. So, that seems like a good place to head off. So, I'll be back in a day or two. Oh, I need to go get breakfast and coffee. Clearly. Goodness. Alright. Let's see. Is there anyone to raid at this strange time of day? Perhaps. As expected, there isn't. Okay. Alright, I'm heading off then. Have a good day and thank you for coming and watching. Goodbye.